major sighting here on the 13th of March. Weird happenings in the skies over Phoenix, and no one seems to be able to explain what it was.
Suddenly, 6 amber orbs in a row, totally distant from each other, massive span across, pop up.
They saw strange lights. There was strange bright lights, over the skies of Arizona. Gets a lot of people wondering, what the heck?
There's going to be a time where they're not going to be able to hide it anymore.
The availability of witnesses was extraordinary.
There are another 10,000 Arizonans who saw the same thing.
Eyewitnesses who saw it say it's like nothing they've ever seen before.
Many investigators call it the largest sighting ever, lasting the longest amount of time, seen by the largest number of people.
The data speaks for itself. Plus, I have photographs that cannot be explained or denied.
Last night, shortly after 8 p.m., hundreds, maybe thousands of Arizonans reported seeing a triangular-shaped object with 3,000 people saw more than stars in the night sky.
The mystery remains unsolved and controversial.
There was nothing there but blackness and these 3 amber orbs. The top orb started to dim as if on a dimmer switch it didn't budge at all.
People who saw the lights will say the lights were orange, they were bright, and they were big, and they were like nothing they've ever seen before. And there's been no official explanation.
This didn't look like anything I'd ever seen in my life. I don't believe they're glare. I don't believe they're conventional aircraft. And I don't believe they're the military testing top secret craft.
Ultimately, it's going to be the people that will sort these things out, rather than the government.
The bigger question is not, is there a phenomenon, but what is this phenomenon?
I'm learning this is happening worldwide. What's going on here? What is this?
And good evening from Philadelphia. Frank here with a Tuesday edition of UFO News Network Sunday. If it's Tuesday, it must be UFO News Network Sunday. So I'm here tonight, and with me again, co-host Chant Hanna. A big event over in Phoenix this past weekend, an anniversary event celebrating the big Phoenix Lights case. Just a bit of news also. We're going to be back again tomorrow, another big event over the weekend in Alabama with the big scientific conference headlined by Luis Elizondo, and we're going to have Rich Hoffman talking about that, just to give you a heads up on that, tomorrow night at somewhere around this time. So listen in then. But let's not waste any time. Let me bring in Chant Hanna, and Chant, tell us what we've got on the agenda tonight.
We have a very special show. We have a special report about the Phoenix Lights, which were spotted over Arizona, Nevada, and the Mexican state of Sonora on March 13th, 1997. I had the privilege of attending this wonderful movie that was directed by Dr. Lynn Khatai, and it was at the Harkins Theater on March 17th on Sunday. I went to the event in the hopes to find out more about this special mass sighting that was witnessed by hundreds of people in different states and also another country. I sat next to a really wonderful person by the name of Joey, who I'll bring on to the show. He went there too to also see what this movie was about, and wanted to also mention something really interesting. This show sold out so fast. The capacity was 300 people. They actually had to open up another theater at 1:30. The show was at 1. So they had simultaneously 2 shows going on at the same time. They had 10 speakers. The speakers were Dr. Lynn Khatai, Dr. Brad Evans, a neuropsychiatrist, and Phoenix Light witness Jim Delatoso, Fran Barwood, councilwoman in Phoenix, Arizona, Travis Walton, Brad Evans, sorry about that. I didn't mean to mention him again. It's Clifford Mahoney, a Zuni elder, Navajo Ranger John Dover, Dr. Duffy McMahon. And wanted to ask Joey, When I had the opportunity to sit down and watch the show and we got to talking, what were the highlights for you when you got to see this movie?
I think just overall, it was a shock to everybody in the Valley. Me being an Arizona native and experiencing this event too myself, I mean, it's kind of like you don't know what to take, of it. It was definitely the talk of the town. So yeah, I mean, if you're in Arizona, if you were born and raised here and something this massive has happened out here, you're definitely like well aware of it. I mean, it's kind of like a modern Roswell, if you ask me.
I know that throughout our talks, as we sat there just off and on throughout the show, you mentioned that you had seen Travis Walton and his son before, and also many of the other speakers. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I met Travis Walton at the UFO Congress, and I was taking pictures there. Alejandro Rojas had set me up with a media pass, and I got a little story behind that too. I wouldn't actually be affiliated with any of this UFO. I want to say scene if it wasn't for Alejandro. So he kind of got me out of the dark period of my life and gave me a chance, an opportunity to come and, shoot and do media for this event. And I never thought that I would be around such like brilliant minds or just be in one roof with people that I would absolutely like have no intention of talking to or meeting in your everyday, norm. So back to Travis Walton. Growing up, I mean, I've seen the movie Fire in the Sky, and I think I was like maybe I want to say about 10, and that was probably one of the most scariest movies I've ever seen. I absolutely feared UFOs after watching that. I feared aliens. I've had, family members that have said things about having, walkthroughs or something in the middle of the night. And I've always been scared with that growing up. But yeah, it's just something that you kind of like, you grow up with that movie, and sure enough, you meet Travis Walton, the actual, person from the movie, and it's like a total shock. It's like I didn't think I was going to be actually talking to this guy. This is the real deal.
Yeah, it was really neat seeing him there.
It definitely was, yeah.
Yeah, so the Phoenix Lights, which was directed by Dr. Lynn Khatai, and the executive producer was Steve Lance. Dr. Khatai made a point of sharing with people, Khatai, that the mass sighting was viewed by hundreds of people, she believes, in a very positive manner. She's never heard anything negative about it. And I myself heard testimony from dozens of people there who were saying that they felt they had nothing but positivity to share about that event. How do you feel about that?
I guess it goes both ways. It all depends on how you act. I mean, obviously, when I got older, and this is like taking in a 10-year-old, mind watching this movie for the first time. I mean, obviously, you're going to be scared of aliens. But as you grow up, you're like, oh, okay, Hollywood movie. Oh, that's great. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know if that's like the reason why I'm so fascinated with this whole scene or why I clicked with it so much. But yeah, I mean, it like you said, positive or not, I think it all depends on how you reacted to the, movie at a certain time in your life.
Yeah, and I'd like to actually just mention to folks a little bit about Alejandro Rojas, because you brought him up, and he's a really important person in the domain of ufology. Alejandro Rojas is a radio host for Open Minds Radio. He's an editor and contributing writer for Open Minds magazine and also Open Minds TV. And he was also the official Director of Public Education, and as a UFO paranormal researcher and journalist, he spent many hours in the field investigating the phenomena. Moving on, we have a really wonderful person I had the privilege of interviewing just recently. His name is Shane Hurd. He is a member of the Phoenix, Arizona MUFON team as a field investigator. Shane, I wanted to ask you if you could speak a little bit about the sellout crowd that occurred during this 22nd anniversary showing, which was the 14th year that Harkins was showing this movie. Could you please touch on the sellout crowd and why the case remains so relevant today? And then lastly, how impactful the ridicule factor was in this case.
Absolutely. It was a great event. I was so surprised at the size of the crowd and the fact that they had to get that second theater. But all of that just speaks to how the case is, in fact, still relevant this many years later. And I think the reason is because, you know, it's such an important case. In fact, it's probably one of the strongest cases in modern history. And I can't help but think kind of from an investigative standpoint about that case and the things that make it so strong. And of course, what stands out to me the most is the fact that it was a mass sighting and the number of people that reported it. And what's really outstanding is how there was, I believe, a couple thousand reports made. And if you take the average that, you know, 1 out of 10 people actually make a report of a sighting, they're thinking that maybe 10 to 20,000 people actually saw these things at night. And I think the fact that all these people are unrelated, they are unrelated geographically and dispersed over across, you know, a couple states, including parts of Mexico, it gives the eyewitness testimony such strength, you know, thousands of points of view. And then I would have to say it's likely one of the most reported cases in history. Now, many people reported to the National UFO Reporting Center, run by Peter Davenport. Many reports were made to MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And then, of course, local news, national news, television, print, web, the military, the city of Phoenix, their 911 call center was, you know, overrun with calls. So it really gives some strong evidence from that point of view.
Shane, real quick, what were you doing back then? Were you living in the Phoenix area at that point?
Yeah, I actually was. In fact, I remember that exact night. I did not see anything, but we were having dinner at a friend's house who had a telescope, and we were going to look at the Hale-Bopp comet. So we were out there doing that, but we're in the extreme northwest part of Phoenix, really outside of Phoenix, maybe 20 miles at the time. And, you know, we just didn't see it. With hindsight, I'm so frustrated that I didn't. But really, it's the thing that tipped me into ufology. It really sparked my interest, not because I saw anything, but because it was in my hometown. And, you know, the coverage in the subsequent weeks and months and really a couple years was just so captivating. I had to get into it. So then the other thing I think that was really strong about it was, you know, there was both video and photographic evidence. In fact, Dr. Khatai herself was an eyewitness and got both photos and video. I'm sure that'll come out a little bit later in our discussion, but that's just another piece of evidence that makes it so credible. And then what's interesting is it's been reported that there was not radar evidence of all of these craft and these things being sighted, which you might think, oh, that kind of weakens the case. But really it doesn't, because you have thousands of eyewitness reports. And what it does, if there's no radar evidence, that really eliminates the possibility of something conventional. And so I think that's helps make that a strong case. And then I couldn't help but notice too the government response. Certainly, many people remember that news conference by Fife Symington, the governor of the state of Arizona at the time, and he brings out a person dressed in a alien costume and kind of mocked the whole thing. And again, if it's a non-issue, why are they going to that trouble to do that? And then, the military, they scrambled jets. The city of Phoenix police kind of poo-pooed it and denied, they were getting a lot of calls. And of course, we know the whole flare thing that's talked about too. So it just seems like a whole lot of effort on the part of the authorities, to cover up a non-event. So I think that makes it real, suspicious as well.
Well, two things. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I wanted to hear what else you had to say. It's really important.
Well, the last thing I would just comment on is that ridicule factor.
Yes.
And, I feel like today it's a lot less than it used to be. And I've kind of come out, as it were, and demonstrated my interest. And, I expected an adverse reaction, but whether it's my family or my coworkers and other people, I ended up getting a positive feedback. And I know that was not the case even 10, 20 years ago. And I think this Phoenix Lights incident really demonstrates the power of that ridicule factor, and the fact that, for example, Frances Emma Barwood, who was a city council person at the time, innocently asked the council if we should investigate this. And it ultimately led to her dismissal or loss of her council seat. And it was just based on that ridicule, the fact that, hey, this is a subject we don't want to deal with, we don't want to talk about, and if you bring it up, you're going to be in trouble, And then, of course, even Fife Symington, he himself, I think his position was a little bit different. He didn't want to cause panic in the state, nor did he want to give his political rivals something to hammer him with. But 10 years later, he admits he, in fact, was an eyewitness to one of the craft as well. So it just shows you how powerful that ridicule factor is. But I think gladly it's diminishing each and every day. And look, we have a show on the radio right now that you can talk about it. And a lot of people, really appreciate it. So I'm glad to see that's happening.
Yes, you mentioned everything I was going to actually ask you about. And that is that Symington said, and I quote, "I'm a pilot, and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything I've ever seen. It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it. Responsible people, I don't know why people would ridicule it." Regarding Frances Barwood, the 1997 Phoenix City Councilwoman who had the courage to start an investigation into this mass sighting event, she had to have spent not just copious amounts of time, but literally probably hundreds of hours investigating this event, because there were over 700 witnesses she interviewed, and the government never interviewed one. How do you feel about that, Shane?
Yeah, it's so disturbing, but thinking about it, if some political science student wanted a case study to see how powerful propaganda can be, or how you can influence the masses, they should look at Project Blue Book, the Air Force, the government, and ufology, and that 1953 Robertson's panel conclusion, how they need to make this go away by ridiculing people, out of making a report or even discussing it. And so it's a powerful demonstration, of that kind of practice. And I would put it in the category of propaganda. It's, it's intelligence based, and it's, it's had a powerful hold on society since 1947.
It has. I agree with you. And thank you for mentioning the element of propaganda, because to hide behind the denial, to have ridiculous props such as an alien walk out on stage, to have a councilwoman spend all of her time, her extra time, to investigate well over 700 cases brought to her attention, 700 people, is absolutely unacceptable. Frank, I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind running a few clips. Some of these clips, you'll get the opportunity to listen to Dr. Khatai and Dr. Brad Evans. He's a neuropsychiatrist who actually witnessed the Phoenix Lights event.
Okay, which one do you want me to start with, Dr. Khatai or Brad Evans?
Yeah, the Dr. Khatai one would be great.
Okay.
It's the longest one.
Yep, okay, here it comes.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me know when we can start pan out so you can get everything.
Because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We just might be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. So it's important that we get this data out in the open and address it, accept it, and study it so we can move forward not only to find out who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution. And then as an experiencer, I mean, I saw these things up close and personal, literally and figuratively, right outside our bedroom window without any knowledge or interest in the topic at all. Here I'm looking at something that seems so out of my realm of reality, and I saw these things literally cloak mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it. It went somewhere when it shrunk like a dimmer switch. It's very hard to really explain.
It stayed stationary where it was.
They didn't budge. They didn't budge. They were right in front of us. They were right in front of us, and they were three orbs in a pyramid formation, one on top and two closely aligned underneath. And you know, my first thought, coming from a video curriculum background, when I wanted to get my camera, but I didn't want to miss anything. And you'll hear that over and over from people who have had an anomalous experience. They don't want to move. They're in awe and in wonder and curious about what's going on, as I was. And I tried to take everything in mentally, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each. They were actually oval shaped, like an egg on its side. They were, I called them an orb because this light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. And the light was a uniform amber light. That's another thing. The word amber just pops in your head. They're not yellow. They're not orange. They're amber. And you would hear that all over the world. People are saying they saw amber lights. They were amber color, and they didn't glare.
That is what Dr. Brad Evans was saying. Doctor, I wanted to bring you into the discussion. This is Dr. Brad Evans. He's a neuropsychiatrist, and he knows Dr. Lynn Khatai. How did you all happen to cross paths with regards to this common denominator that you share, the Phoenix Lights?
Our family had an experience, but the most important thing was our memory of it was completely delayed. No discussion of the event during it, nothing after it, and nothing for 3 months, until, as always, there's some TV show about UFOs. I am not a ufologist. I don't care. I'm not a ufologist.
You don't have a hand in it.
I don't have money on the table.
Right.
I'm just not.
Sure.
I'm not into it. So I had the typical Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss reaction that I think a lot of people who are receptive to something unusual, who want to just now think about it, talk about it, and understand it. I looked carefully at what effect this experience had on us, other than me being excited about something I couldn't analyze. It was gone. I immediately wrote a letter to the director of MUFON and said, this is what I thought, this is what I saw, this is the formation from this time of the night to that time of the night. Here's what it felt like, here's what I heard, here's what I saw. Done. Other than the effect on the family that was very positive. Even though the others didn't talk about it even 3 months later, uniformly the feeling was sense of well-being, calm, not excited, negative, not panicked. This was not harmful. This was exciting.
Interesting that Dr. Khatai said she felt the same sense of empowerment or calm.
That's the one thing that was one of the reasons I came forward, not only to set the record straight, because there was so much mis and disinformation. It wasn't just 1 or 2 events. It was many events. It was a parade throughout the state and Nevada and New Mexico and California of not only these orbs, these lights in uniform, equidistantly placed mile, and we just learned from the National UFO Reporting Center, some of them were 8 miles wide, but there were also craft, and there were 10 different craft from thousands of reports, a study, 12-year study of reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, from Arizona MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, from Village Labs, which was the local clearinghouse here in a computer lab that was a clearinghouse here in Phoenix, and from then Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood, who received over 1,000 reports. 2 or more people had to see the same craft, actual craft, to be in the study. And when all was said and done, there were 10 very different craft, from V shape to triangle shape to delta shape to boomerang shape to even disc shape. And whether it was one craft that could morph into looking different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that's what was concluded after 12 years of meticulously studying the data, because there were many things happening at the same time over a dozen hours, not only in our state, but other states as well. So I hope that people look at the data. Phoenix Lights Network website is packed with information to explore and consider, not trying to convince anybody of anything.
Right.
I didn't know any of this stuff, and I was blown away. So the data speaks for itself.
The data speaks for itself, but what's so interesting about this situation is that the word consciousness has been connected to it. I wanted to actually ask both yourself and Dr. Evans, how does consciousness fit into this entire category, being the Phoenix Lights? What are your thoughts on that?
Just to finish the thought from Dr. Evans, there has not been not one credible report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomenon. Can't speak for other things, but I can about the Phoenix Lights. And we're talking 22 years of data of thousands of people coming forward, and consistently, as Dr. Evans mentioned, as myself included, as the experiencer, I was in awe. I was in wonder. I was curious. Many people have told me that they felt blessed to have had that experience. And to this day, I am still getting emails and messages on Facebook from people, especially military pilots and military who are now retiring, who are coming forward and sharing their sightings. And it's very interesting because, they themselves were curious what was happening. There was no investigation. That's the other part of this, the story of how the story unfolded, which is just fascinating in and of itself, that there was no investigation, no explanation for months until a front page USA Today article on June 18th. Can I start again? Okay. It's really interesting how the story unfolded in such an amazing way in and of itself, because there was no investigation, no explanation for months. It was uncanny, because we're talking about rooftop level. People said they could have thrown a rock at these craft or these objects, these lights that actually blocked out the stars in between the lights, whether there was a force field or whatever. Right. It was that close. I mean, we have a pilot in the documentary who was right under what he would call a well or a canister of light that did not reflect outside. These lights were very unusual, just like the orb. It didn't reflect outside of the edge. Very unusual. And, when you start hearing the firsthand reports of the technology alone, some people saw these craft, remind you, 1 to 8 mile wide, take off at blink speed without even dispersing the air, totally silent. That was also very eerie to many people. And some people saw these orbs detached from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it. We have reports of one craft that split in two and then shot straight up. We also have a report from an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base at 3 a.m. the next morning. And we have the recording, part of the recording in the documentary, so people can hear firsthand how professional this report was, to the National UFO Reporting Center, saying that the military from Luke sent aircraft out to intercept and get gun camera film, which you heard they did. And as they got closer, and this was right over central Phoenix, one of these mile-wide crafts, the lights started to dim, and then the entire thing blinked out and disappeared. And he said he helped one of the pilots out of his aircraft. He was so shaken up by it that you can imagine. And then Luke was on lockdown. So all this is happening, and then no investigation, no explanation until June 18th, months later, front page USA Today article. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why then. But here was the first time that people outside of Arizona were hearing about the Phoenix Lights. And we didn't have social media at the time, and we were deluged overnight by media from all over the world. And they, too, were asking, because once they talked to the witnesses, just like Dr. Evans described, their reports were so detailed and so heartfelt. They, too, are asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? Interestingly, the very next day, after nothing for months, our former Governor Simonton called a press conference, an unscheduled press conference, to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix, and people took it seriously. And here he comes marching out one of his days with a giant alien head costume and made a mockery of it, which was very disconcerting, particularly for parents who were with their children, and here they're seeing this thing that looks 2 and 3 miles wide, and yet he's making a joke out of it. Well, that kind of put a lid on it. Yes, it did. And I called every military base. I had to get to the bottom of it, that it was a mission to find out what they knew. Right. And they were more interested in seeing my data, and I had 35 millimeter data not only from 95, but 2 months before the mass sighting of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location over Class B restricted airspace, as air traffic controllers would tell me the next morning, both in January and the morning after the mass sighting, about 1,000 feet altitude, that they couldn't explain. And they were more interested in seeing, I didn't tell them what I had, but they were more interested in seeing what I had. And I didn't want to meet with anybody. And they were like almost joking about it. Oh, whoever knows this, it was God, whoever did it. I mean, they were just as curious. And here I get a call a month later from one of the heads for PR from the Air National Guard, and she says, oh, Dr. Lynn, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled, because I was looking for any logical explanation. I'm a healthy skeptic. One must be when you're open, when you're a physician. And I saw it up close and personal as well. But I was thrilled that they had an explanation. She says, do you believe that in almost 5 months, nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off flares in Operation Snowbird, which means, in military terms, diversionary tactical maneuvers, which, now in retrospect, they may have sent off flares, but there hasn't been one witness to the true unknowns that describes what flares do, which I said to her, well, wait a minute. When was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She says March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh, no. I said, are you sure? She says, absolutely not. I said, well, I have 35 millimeter photographs, and my husband saw them too, of the same exact phenomena in the same location 2 months before the mass sighting, confirmed the next morning by air traffic controllers as 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. And she says, you never told me that. And then I said, and you're trying to tell me that flares, that military illumination flares, which she said, that drift and drop on a parachute haphazardly, cannot stay in a formation. They just drift with the wind. They have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself, and their mission is to illuminate the area around it. That's what they're meant to do. Not one witness mentioned that, and I said, you're telling me that flares that cannot keep a formation traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistantly spaced mile formation, V formation, for hours? And she says, I have a call coming in. I got back to you. Well, I'm still waiting.
Interesting how your evidence discounted that other story she had to tell.
That's why I had to come forward.
Well, it sure couldn't be what I saw.
Doctor, I have a question for you. There is no such thing as a PhD in being a ufologist. Basically, it can be a hobby for somebody. The question I have for you is, it does not take a degree to look into the sky to notice that something is anomalous and doesn't seem quite right. It's not an airplane, yet it seems to be traversing the sky at some very strange speeds, odd distances, at very fast pace, much faster than the aircraft that we have out today.
Or much slower.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. The question I have for you is, how does the human mind grapple with seeing something in the sky that could be anomalous and possibly an extraterrestrial craft or of extraterrestrial origin?
This is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I think it's the topic that we should move into now everywhere. The reality of these events. We don't have to talk about the reality of the events anymore. these are seen too widely. Very diverse kinds of objects, lights, and so forth, that the government will not take credit for, that the military will not take credit for. These are things clearly being observed by the average or other person. What we're talking about today is the experiencer, as much as, if not more, than the objects themselves. The objects are a given. We're not discussing phenomenology or reality about these things. We're done with it. It's 22 years of it, each year going, what's going on here? No, the issue is, what's your first reaction? What's your delayed reaction? More importantly, what comes to mind over years? And you wonder where these ideas are coming from. And why are you talking to so-and-so about this idea? Unless somehow you think they're ready to hear this idea. Things may unfold over time. It begins with people's memories coming back. Something triggers it. Often, wait, this happened so long ago, how did you forget it? We forgot it for 3 months.
And it's interesting, not only did Kurt Russell forget it too and buried it, and he was actually seeing the same exact thing I was filming at the same time, which is really interesting in itself.
About a half an hour later.
Right.
Because it was moving south right over me. The timing's perfect.
And also, our own governor, who mocked the sighting in '97, for whatever reason, bravely came forward right after the 10th anniversary to say that he actually saw one of these mile-wide craft, and in his own opinion, and he's an awarded military pilot, number one, it was definitely not flares. We're talking about craft with gunmetal bottoms and windows and so forth that many people saw. But also, in his own words, it was otherworldly. And you would hear that all over the world. Other countries are much more open to these phenomena as being otherworldly, other intelligences other than our own.
But consistent with your question, what are the most normal reactions? Rationalization, right away. Average person, it's military.
Would it be fair to say rationalization at the point of being irrational?
No. Rationalization, conscious rationalization is, this is explainable, keep driving.
Even if the explanation could be rational?
Absolutely. In other words, your reaction can be unconscious or conscious. It depends on what you're ready for at the time. And if you're ready, it's, as they used to say in behavioral research, how you react to things that are outside the realm of your experience, set and setting. Where are you, and what is your mindset before you experience this thing? If you're technical, you go, it's probably explainable. Well, I'll get to it. The other one is unconscious, which is repression. That is, I saw nothing, which is really a very common way the mind handles something way outside the range of normal experience, which means you forget it. Now, when it comes back, it can be overwhelming. And I think folks sort of have to be prepared that that could occur. Don't get nuts about it. In other words, hold on. This could be your rational thinking coming back. Something could have triggered it. Now work on what that was and think clearly. What was your reaction to it? What did you get out of it? Down the road a ways, many people do that. I can tell you, as a neuropsychiatrist, they do not share that with people. Because when they do, they'll be ridiculed.
Well, not only that, which is true, and we've had so much ridicule, that's why it's enough already with that, but everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic, and some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time, but now the work that we've been doing and trying to get out there in a credible, professional manner with the documentary, with the 3rd edition of the book, now with the graphic novel activities coloring book for all ages, which is 160 pages packed with incredible data that actually I'm going to be sharing and doing a youth program, which I'm very excited about, for the 50th anniversary MUFON International Symposium in July. Fantastic. And it's the first of its kind, and we're getting that all together, and we're going to be showing the documentary. Kids love it. Kids are here today watching the documentary, and I have so many children from 8 on up doing book reports on the book. I mean, they thirst for this knowledge.
they're open to it.
And
like a child and paranormal phenomena. They're open.
Some parents and parts of society might feel that it's dangerous for children to be exposed to this topic. How do you feel about that?
I think if this is real, let me go back a step. I visited my grandchildren who are 3 in California. Guess what's on TV? What cartoons are they seeing all the time? Spaceship? Aliens that look like grays?
Movies.
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
For the last 50 years.
And as I said last year at this program, it was in March last year. In December 2017, what happened? The government said, we've been looking at this stuff forever. We've spent millions on this. Here's some gun camera video and 2 jet pilots talking to each other. And I said at the meeting last year, ready? Everyone, it's just 3 months ago. Who saw that? Who remembers it? It was on the news for 3 days. Not a hand went up. And I said, you've been all pretty well prepared for this, haven't you been? So when other things happen, you won't be too fearful, will you? That's the answer to the question about kids. They're already being prepared. That's why they're open to it.
But
they're very familiar with these things.
I do have to say that the media and Hollywood is still portraying this topic as negative and scary and threatening. And that was one of the reasons I came forward to say enough with that. There's not one report of harm, threat, or abduction. If anything, it's just the reverse.
I would say you have to be careful. Remember, we say today words matter. If somebody on TV says they saw something and they said, wow, that was scary, wait a minute, was it mysterious? That's a different word, which is more exciting to me. Mysterious or scary? Let's talk a while. What did you mean by that word? What was the real word you could use in retrospect about it? Wait and see. Not scary.
But also, Dr. Gary Schwartz says in the documentary, he's the head of the Consciousness Study Department at the U of A, University of Arizona. If you're ingrained with the thoughts of threat, and harm, how do you think you're going to react if you see something coming towards you? And it's interesting that in '97, 6 months before the mass sighting, the movie Independence Day was huge.
Yes.
And children, also interestingly, were usually the first to see this mile-wide V of lights coming towards them and alert their parents and yelling, Independence Day, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it came closer, a calmness came over everyone, a connectiveness to the phenomena that after it passed, they wanted to chase after it or get in their cars and just follow it. The transformation in real time was telling and stunning. People were in awe, were in wonder. They were curious. They had telepathic messages not to worry. They're not here to harm you. And long term, I'm still getting emails. I mean, I have thousands and thousands of emails from Phoenix Lights witnesses that it changed their life forever.
I didn't share this, by the way, with the director of... I did share this with the director of MUFON, but nobody else. He asked...
Jim.
Yeah, he asked in front of the big topological plaster map of Arizona with the time, date, stamps, and who saw what when. Jim, this was a homecoming parade. This was a parade. This was a demonstration. We're here. Don't worry. And I'm thinking, where are these words coming from? From a neuropsychiatrist. Hard science, hard clinical science. People have asked me, was that telepathic? Nope, I just knew it.
And that's what people have said time and time again. And people ask me, so why did they come here? Who are they? What? You know, the point is that whoever was behind this wanted to, not only in a non-threatening way, alert us to their presence, okay? Raise our consciousness to be aware that we're not alone in the universe. And it isn't a belief, it's a knowing. Once you have that experience.
Big difference. The journalistic and scientific communities are actively ignoring this phenomenon. If extraterrestrials were to land here, how does that change science? What kind of new frontiers in science would be open? Quantum physics? Any other categories you can mention?
Quantum physics is already there. I mean, they're talking about different dimensions. Okay,
Right.
if we're talking 10 or 11 different
There's already
dimensions,
quantum physics about other dimensions.
but the point is that if there's other time and spaces along with ours, then why is it such a leap to think that there could be other intelligences in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited?
How do you feel about the possibility of metamaterials being discovered by To the Stars Academy? They have a project called Atom Project. Supposedly they are studying UAP fragments within their possession, possibly. This, if true, would mean the possibility of having fragments made of exotic materials or metals of unknown origin.
Do you watch her smiling?
We already have that.
We've had it for 70 years.
Well, besides, and meteorites and asteroids, that's how even astrophysicists at ASU, Dr. Paul Davies, who will deny that we have UFOs here, will also say that we are probably seeded from Mars. That, something exploded, and we know of panspermia when a star explodes, and they're consisted of organic materials are spread throughout the universe. So, to think that there aren't other planets, and we're now being told that there are habitable planets out there in habitable zones. I mean, there is so much, and even just if you look at Earth, okay, and you look from the depths of the frozen Arctic to the hot springs, okay, that are uninhabitable for most things. There's still organisms that live there. They just found arsenic. Yeah, that's right. Living in arsenic organisms. So our planet alone, there are such a range of habitable areas that are viable. And, come on, the ocean is about 70% of our Earth. They could be down there. We've seen submersibles. We call them submersible, unidentified submersibles.
Yes.
That they could just be here having a grand old time and been here for centuries, and we wouldn't even know it.
How will it fit into modern science should all of this occur?
Right.
For which we've been all prepared for. I don't think it's going to be shocking to anyone, period. Exobiology from NASA will be all over it. Cosmologists will be all over it. Physicists trying to understand how did you get here? I want to know the physics. I think that's going to be the reaction, not panic. This will just expand the fields that already exist, and it'll be incorporated into it.
And what we're doing here today is just mainstream being able to come to an event, and as far as we know, it's the only mainstream event of its kind. Most, if not 90% of the audience, are just regular people that either had the experience, had an experience, curious about the experience, curious about the phenomena, and once they leave, it happens every year. This is the 14th year we are sold out. For the 14th year. In fact, I had another theater this year because people are so curious now, and as the media that are kind about this and realistic about this are letting some facts leak out here and there, more and more people will feel comfortable coming to an event like this. And people come as strangers but leave connected. There's something about learning about this phenomena, that knowing it's safe to learn about this phenomena. That's why I applaud MUFON and invite people to the MUFON conferences and so forth, and especially the MUFON, Arizona MUFON here with Stacy Wright and Jim Mann. I mean, they're gold standard of what should happen. They are just so on top of things. They have wonderful speakers and just really there for people that need to be there. I mean, we have to have some kind of a networking so that when someone does have a sighting, that...
My card's full. I gotta get another card.
Okay.
I'm going to have to go back.
You have to go.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Talk to you.
Okay, so there's that. That is wrapped up. That was a fun little interview there, Chant. You and Dr. Evans were mixing it up pretty good there. Hello, Chant. Chant,
Sorry
can you
about
hear
that.
me? Okay.
Yep, I'm right here. Sorry about that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so yeah, that was fun to listen to. And what do we got next? Shane, you're still with us, right?
Yeah, I think Shane is. He just
Shane
checked
is.
out
He
for a
might be-
moment, but
he
I
might
just
be on
wanted.
mute. Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I wanted to bring up a few things to people just to, because there might be listeners who are coming in right now. And that is what we're covering are these topics. The Phoenix Lights, it's a documentary done by Dr. Khatai, executive producer Steve Lance. And it is based on the book that also was written by Dr. Khatai. I believe that's called The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. And it features astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell, former Governor Fife Symington, former Vice Mayor Barwood, and investigators, military pilots, and witnesses. And I also wanted to mention a few things. And that is one reason why it's really important to go to this event is you'll get to see wonderful things such as the only known forensic analysis done of the Phoenix Lights in animation form by Laurent Chabin. And he came all the way from France to join us at that event on Sunday, March 17th at 1 p.m. And Larry Lowe also worked in collaboration with that important animation that they created together. They also had another guest who spoke in a panel at that event, and he spoke about the Prescott case, where he actually is the only known Prescott witness who viewed this mass sighting event. The other people that you'll get to listen to at this important event when you go next year, for example, one person by the name of Clifford Mahoney, a Zuni elder, he gave the Native American perspective regarding the connections of this topic and how Native Americans have cited this this strange anomaly, this craft, for hundreds of years. And then also John Dover, a former tribal police officer, he spoke at the event to a great extent. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize to everybody how important it is to go to this kind of event to become more educated about it.
And they're fun. They're fun to go to these events.
They are so much fun. Oh, I might sound really serious when I'm talking about it, but everybody felt so empowered and thrilled to learn more about this topic. And there's also a wonderful graphic novel that was created and written by Dr. Khatai for kids to actually spend time on and get involved with. And wanted to know, Frank, if you wouldn't mind playing a couple clips. And that is, there's just very short clips left here of Dr. Brad Evans, neuropsychiatrist, and also Phoenix Light witness. And then there's also another clip, extremely short, that's left with Dr. Khatai and Dr. Brad Evans, in whatever order.
Yep. Okay, I'll run the Brad Evans clip now. You two were mixing it up pretty good, like I said. So let's hear more of you and Dr. Evans. Let's go.
Great. And then just lastly, wanted to mention to our listeners that we're then going to bring on
Frank Stalter. He's not here today,
really
but I'm
special
here on
guest.
site.
And I'll go ahead and let everybody know her first name, Stacy, and then I'll let everybody know who she is right after that.
Yeah. So let's run this one, and it should run us right up until about the time if we're going to bring her on at the bottom of the hour, then that'll be about right. Okay, here it comes.
Dr. Brad Evans, a neuropsychiatrist, who is here to celebrate the 22nd anniversary of the Phoenix Lights movie. Director Dr. Lynn Khatai. Doctor, can you please give us a little bit of information regarding why you're here today and anything else that you feel is relevant to share with our listeners?
Sure. I was one of those, what we now call experiencers, and this was back in March 1997. I was living in Tucson and working as a neuropsychiatrist. My daughter was going to a swim meet in Tempe, so we were driving up in the evening before to get into a hotel and be ready to go the next morning. I was a general aviation pilot, and as we were driving northwest, and South Mountain and the towers were in sight, the valley up east of the international airport, Sky Harbor, and the silhouette of South Mountain was up far to our right, maybe by 10 miles. And I said to my wife, who was driving, well, I've been a pilot for 10 years. We've been living in the desert for now 7 years. And I said, there is nothing I've ever seen at night, and I prefer to fly at night. There is nothing I've ever seen that I can't explain. And she just said, then what's that? And what it was the 6, for me, fairly bright amber lights right in that valley between Sky Harbor and Camelback Mountain. I was pretty much fascinated. I had never seen anything like it. This is really on the approach into Sky Harbor. This was about 8:35 at night. I tend to be analytic, and I know this is important. I'm going to look at the clock. I'm going to say this is starting at 8:35. Now let's just watch and see what happens. So for us, these 6 objects began moving toward us. And very, very slowly. And I said to my wife, you need to slow down. This is pretty important to me. I don't know why it's very important to me, but I need to see this more carefully. We slowed down from 75 miles an hour to 60, and I said, can you go slower? We got down to 40 so I can open the moonroof. And just as I opened it, it's directly overhead. The lights off in the distance were horizontal because the angle, I'm seeing an object obviously on edge, so it's just a straight line of lights. By the time it's overhead, it has spread out to the full 6 lights and another trailing light. And to give you a sense of the color and the size, I could hold a dime at arm's length and say that's how big the lights are.
Incredible.
So that's basically the experience, except I was a skeptic. I'm a neuroscientist.
Yes.
But I was a chemist. That's hard science.
Yes, it is.
Hard clinical science. I've been trained in how the mind works.
Right.
So the first thing I do is analyze, is this me or that? You always have to think in terms of what we in the business call referential thinking.
Yes.
Is this related to me? What is this? How am I reacting to it? This is how we're trained. How am I reacting to something I've never seen before in my life?
When you looked at something that was not tangible in front of you, and you did not have the benefit of the hard science or data available to you to be able to delineate what you're looking at, what did you inherently feel? Your emotions, whether it was science related or not, what did you feel when you looked at that? Did it something intuitively tell you that it could have been extraterrestrial related, or was it just an anomalous object in the sky?
I never in my life used the term awesome. It was majestic. What I experienced was awe. I've never seen anything like this. More importantly, as it's coming overhead, the full shape, size of this thing becomes obvious. And then you're simply overwhelmed with something that you know can't be military. My wife would say, this is not about us, this is not for us, we need to keep driving. And I'm saying, no, I think this is something important, and it's for me to know about. I need to know about this. I wouldn't be able to explain to you, why do I need to know about this? So basically, I've been asked repeatedly, how big was this thing? Well, again, as a pilot and a scientist, I had no reference point. So when you see something in the sky, even as a pilot, it's a dark sky, how do you know what size it is? I have no reference point to starboard. I have no reference point to port side. But being the kind of person I am, I do this angle when the lights first appear. I'm not like, I'm doing my calculations already. There's the peak of Camelback Peak. This object is below that. I'm thinking of the angle. I'm 15 miles or so away. That's at 1,200 feet, which is traffic pattern altitude coming into Sky Harbor from the east. And I'm thinking, who would be flying over Sky Harbor with commercial airlines flying in at that altitude? Okay, but when it's directly overhead, I'm assuming, for no other good reason, that it must be at about the same altitude. Then the only thing I can say.
Okay. I'm Chant Hanna with the UFO News Network. My co-host is Frank.
Okay, and that is wrapped up. So it's bottom of the hour now. Chant, do you want to give Stacy a call?
Oh, okay.
And bring her in.
All right. And before I do that, let me just go ahead and just tell everybody a little bit about her. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, could you play that clip while I give her a ring regarding the interview I did with her?
Hang on a sec. Let me find it. I don't see it. So we'll just go ahead and bring her in. How's that? Calling Stacy. Hello, Stacy.
Yes.
Hi, Stacy. Frank here. Chance on the line, and Shane Hurd as well.
Hi guys, how y'all doing?
Doing good. Hang on a sec. Let's see what happened with Chant.
Oh, there I am. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, you're there? Okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Were you able to play that clip? I apologize. For some reason, I got.
No. What happened there, Chant?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, great. I apologize. Yeah, I somehow got muted out there. I think my audio got abducted.
Okay, there you go.
Is there any way that you can actually play that interview of Stacy?
Well, we've got Stacy right on the line, so.
Oh, we do? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and introduce her. Thank you so much for letting me know that. Stacy Wright, who's a really wonderful person. She's put so much energy and effort into the topic of ufology. She's the Assistant State Director of Arizona and the co-director of Phoenix MUFON. She's gone to the Phoenix Lights movie maybe 10 or 11 times. And she also wants to cover the topic of a really interesting angle that I didn't hear about before. And that is that the state of Arizona got together with Phoenix MUFON to, I guess, have an exhibit regarding the Phoenix Lights. I wanted to know, Stacy, could you please cover that a little bit and welcome onto the show?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we were very happy to get an invitation from the Arizona Historical Society Museum, which is the venue where we hold our monthly Phoenix MUFON meetings. They approached us and asked if we would be interested in partnering with them on an exhibit upstairs in their beautiful museum centering on the Phoenix Lights. So, of course, we said, yeah, let's do this. So about 2 years ago, the exhibit opened, and it is just a beautiful, interactive, wonderful exhibit up there. We've got about a 15-foot timeline up against the wall of exactly where the craft was spotted coming across the whole state of Arizona. We've got about a 6 or 7 minute looping movie on a big monitor up there on the wall that shows a lot of the information there. And it just, it's really a lot of fun. We actually created a V-shaped craft with the lights embedded on the underside of it that is suspended from the ceiling and hangs right over the top of the exhibit. So it's really some good eye candy for people that are interested in that. And the museum personnel have told us that they receive more good feedback on that one exhibit than any others in that whole museum. And it's huge.
That's incredible. That's just like actually going to the movie, having that kind of experience to be that interactive with that kind of event, to sort of place yourself there and imagine it.
It's really fun. And we were, very flattered to have them approach us with this. Being that it's a state-run organization there, and for them to acknowledge that the Phoenix Lights was not only kind of a fun claim to fame that Phoenix has, but it's also got so much witness testimony that it's considered factual. So for them to put it in a historical museum is really something, and we're very proud of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, it being factual. because there were literally hundreds of witnesses that were able to see this mass event. Wanted to also give a little bit background on MUFON. And another mention that's important is that Stacy was invited to be a guest speaker on the panel at this wonderful Phoenix Lights movie event at Harkins Theater on March 17th. And she was talking about how MUFON is the world's largest database. If you don't want to report it to the police, for example, the military, the Air Force Base, or Sky Harbor Airport, you can call MUFON to try to get to the bottom of a witness-based sighting. MUFON took over Project Blue Book in 1969, which started in 1947, and took the reportings of sightings from there. Many field investigators were actually at the event, at the Phoenix Lights movie event. How busy are your field investigators, Stacy?
They're swamped. Arizona seems to be a hot spot for UFO sightings, and we get about 350 sightings just in the state of Arizona every year. So we've got a team of about 17 field investigators, and they're busy. I assign them cases every week. Someone's got a new case coming up, so it's always something really interesting. And we're busy. So, and the fun thing about it is we still get sighting reports in from people who witnessed the Phoenix Lights back in '97. There's people that are just now feeling comfortable enough to come forward and say, yeah, I saw that, and here's my story. So, of course, we take down their information, we add it to our database, and there's not a lot we can do with investigating that case now other than to piece some of the puzzle pieces together, but we love to get their sighting reports, and even if it's only just for information-only purposes, it's just, seriously a piece of the puzzle that we would love to have. So we welcome all of that.
Stacy, Frank here, interrupting as always. Were you living in the Phoenix area when this case happened, and did you get a look at it yourself?
I was living here at the time, but I did not see it. I wasn't really involved in the whole UFO thing back then, but I was always very involved with, astronomy. So I often looked up at the sky, but that night wasn't one of them. So, yeah, I heard about it from a friend who actually called in from out of state and said, hey, what's up with the UFOs you guys had last night? So, yeah, I wish that I had seen it. My kids did. They were out in the desert with their dad.
Okay.
They saw it, had no idea what it was. But
incredible.
Yeah.
Wanted to also bring up a few things that are really important regarding this massive Arizona flyover event that happened. And that is once a month, on average, a witness comes forward with the courage to share their sighting. Wanted to talk about that, but I would also like to add really important data to that, and that is Cheryl Costa, who is a UFO data gatherer, so to speak. She's a statistician. She gathers statistics from different UFO databases around the country. She reported that Arizona is number one regarding sightings in the United States. Does that surprise you?
She does some amazing work in collecting all of this data that she has. And so when she told us about this, maybe about a year ago, I was really surprised. And then I noticed that just a couple weeks ago, she did put up more information there that said that Phoenix, Arizona is the number one U.S. city for UFO sighting reports. And yeah, that's cool. We've actually got Cheryl Costa coming in to speak with us on May 11th at a Phoenix MUFON meeting. So we're looking forward to hearing a lot more about how she gets this data and how she ties all this in together.
Yes, and I think it's also important, to go from the numbers, which can become very impersonal, but it is important, of course. We want to know the data. That's critical. But then bring it down to a person level, and that is how courageous these folks are to go to MUFON, to share their sighting with you. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, as far as general sightings or as far as the Phoenix Lights sightings?
Right. Just in general, my understanding is that it's about once a month on average a witness comes to talk to report a sighting to MUFON. Has that always been the case, or did that pick up after this mass Arizona flyover event happened?
Well, we still do get about probably one person a month, yes, that does come up to us and says, I want to tell you about my sighting that I had during the Phoenix Lights event. So we love to hear this stuff from these people, like I said earlier. But we get, the sightings run the gamut. I mean, you just wouldn't believe all the stuff that people are seeing and experiencing. And yes, it is very brave of some of them to come forward and tell us, because these things, when a person has an experience with a UFO, it rocks their world. So it's a life-changing event, and we want to be there to take down their information. We actually have counselors that work with the experiencers if they need someone like that to talk to. So we try to really, take care of the people that come forward, because this is a very personal, life-changing event for everyone. And, we got to take care of these people. These are our people of tomorrow, and so we give them a lot of respect.
I also wanted to mention a few things, and that is there was a very interesting anecdotal story that at Sunset Point in Arizona, tons of people saw a giant V-shaped craft fly over the canyon at dusk. Can you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah, well, we've heard this from a few people over the years, and there's a stretch of about 150 miles in between Phoenix and Flagstaff, which is straight north of us. There's a big interstate that goes up there called I-17. And about in the middle of there is a big, nice, beautiful rest area called Sunset Point. And on the west side of Sunset Point is a big canyon that runs right down over the edge of the bluff there. It's beautiful and very scenic. So the place where they have the rest stop is just perfect. It's huge. The parking lot there probably holds 150 or 200 cars at a time, and it's always a busy place. So I guess on the early evening of March 13th, 1997, there were so many people going back and forth on the freeway there. A lot of them stopped at the rest area. A lot of them just traveling along busy I-17. And this V-shaped craft, which was the one that was reported mostly during the massive Arizona UFO flyover, just cruised right alongside the road there, right over the top of this canyon, putting on a show, silently, floating along very slowly, and tons of people saw this. And from what I understand, they all just stood there with their mouths open, just watching this thing fly by, and it was heading south right toward Phoenix. So the crazy thing is there wasn't one single sighting of one craft that happened. There was actually 7 or 8 craft throughout the whole state of Arizona that traversed all parts of it. The one that you hear the most about is the one that, of course, came from our very northwest corner and went all the way through the state and across the border into Mexico. So we've heard from a lot of people saying, well, Area 51 is right up there. It came from the Las Vegas kind of area. So it probably was something that came from Area 51, don't you think? But when you think of the sheer size of just this one craft that people were describing, if this was something that the military had hidden up there, super secret, why would they then fly this thing right over the top of a major metropolitan area like Phoenix for everyone to see? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And if it wasn't one of ours, but was one of an extraterrestrial origin, coming from the same area up there, people are still saying, well, it could have still gotten, out of Area 51. So I have to just wonder, well, what, did it get loose? Did it get loose and then it just decided to parade itself over this major metropolitan area? Mm-hmm. But it certainly put on a show, that's for sure. I mean, it wasn't just hundreds of people that witnessed this. It was tens of thousands of people that witnessed this sighting.
I wanted to mention also the Native American perspective and information gathering on this topic. Native Americans have reported when they felt comfortable to do so, because my understanding, according to John Dover and other Native Americans, they don't really care to talk about this topic too much, that they've seen this craft for centuries. Do you have anything to share with us on that topic?
Well, we've talked to them on numerous occasions, and we've been up on the land with the Navajo Rangers and had just some really wonderful special times up there, meeting some of the people that live there. But yeah, they have stuff happening all the time. This is nothing new to them. They simply don't talk about it, okay? Because once they start talking about stuff, then the people come pouring in, and that's not what they want. So, the events leading up to the Phoenix Lights in 97, for a couple of days before that March 13th date, there was things buzzing around some of the big valleys up there, just lights circling the valley. The people were coming out with their lawn chairs, their ice chests. This was just a nightly show. So they're just coming out to watch the show every night. So then when they heard that the big sighting happened down there in the city, it really wasn't anything new to them. It kind of surprises them, I think, that we're making such a big deal about it when they witness this all the time. So it's just really interesting to get their take on it.
Yeah, John Dover was also mentioning how in Window Rock, he had information that Green Berets and Navy SEALs and other government-related intelligence folks were actually going out there to try and witness anomalous objects in the sky, extraterrestrial craft, in other words, was their aim, and that they, meaning himself and possibly others, had gathered evidence of that. Does it surprise you that the government would try and gather information on this topic, and do you believe they actually do that to this day?
Yeah, I do believe they actually do that to this day. I know that there was some information that had been gathered up there on the Navajo reservation maybe 10 or 12 years ago. There was a lot of Bigelow's group up there with the NIDS organization, which is the National Institute for Discovery Sciences. I know they were up there trying to get some information from people. There was also a couple of men up there that were posing as MUFON field investigators and trying to get information from them. One gentleman up there actually gave them a tape that had some video recordings of some of the sightings up there, and never got it back. They said, oh, yeah, we're just going to borrow it. We'll make sure we get this back to you. Never heard a word from them. They contacted MUFON, tried to find out what happened to their tape of evidence. And it was someone just posing as a MUFON field investigator to try to get this from them. So I can see that they probably don't have a real good taste in their mouth right now for people posing as field investigators up there. So we have to be super careful and very respectful when we do go talk to them.
There's cave paintings that go back thousands of years that reveal possible extraterrestrial intelligence visiting our planet on the walls of caves all around the world, and the craft that they might travel in. How do you feel about the possibility that ET civilizations may be traveling back and forth, possibly and probably interstellar, to this planet on a regular?
I feel very strongly that is probably the case, yes. If you go back and you do your studying and you look at your history and you look at your archaeology and you really dig deep in your research, you're going to come across the Sumerian tablets, okay? You start researching some of that stuff and you find out when this was written, who it was written by, what the stories are telling on those clay tablets, and you're going to find out that we've not been told really the truth of things. And there's a lot of stuff we have yet to uncover. There's a lot of things we have yet to disclose, maybe a few things we've been lied about. It's really kind of scary when you really go back and look at the history of this world as we know it.
Right.
So, I think that these extraterrestrials are absolutely coming back and visiting, maybe checking on us, monitoring some things. I think we're probably a pretty good project to them at this point.
I agree with you on that. Comprehending just how much we don't know regarding what you just said, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I wanted to ask Shane Hurd, a field investigator for Phoenix MUFON, a few questions, and that is, why, in the face of evidence, I'm not saying proof, evidence, and I say it to you in that way because you're an investigator, you know the difference, do people still deny so strongly the possibility of extraterrestrial civilization visitation to this planet?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people do that, and it because it messes with their worldview. It might be, religious ideas or, scientific ideas, whatever it is that that, you know, like Stacy said, rocks their world. And so some people just can't accept it. But, you know, there are a whole lot of people now that are accepting of it because many people are having experiences. And, you know, it's like the James Fox movie. I know what I saw.
Right.
You know, and you can't deny that. So more and more people are becoming used to the idea and accepting. And I think it's making our job a bit easier that you can get that information.
There's a lot of talk about gray aliens. That's a really popular topic on social media regarding the domain of ufology. Have you ever come across anyone, Shane, that has told you they feel they have had information on gray aliens, or they've witnessed them, or any experiences regarding that?
Actually, Stacy and myself actually had a couple abduction cases, and in each of those cases, yes, people saw either grays, and in fact, in one case, they claimed to see reptilian. And again, we're not being judgmental whether they, you know, it actually occurred or not. But the fact is people are seeing something. They are having experiences, and it takes a lot of courage to come forward and tell somebody something like that. So that's why we're, you know, very careful to handle those cases well. We make sure that those people are respected, and that we do our best as investigators to treat that evidence with respect and dignity, and, you know, and do our best to resolve that case.
Recently, there's been a lot of talk about a hot button topic called metamaterials, also known as exotic alloys or exotic materials. Rumor went around Bigelow had stored this kind of material for the government. And also, To the Stars Academy, TTSA, said that with their Atom project, that they are in possession of UAP fragments. That Luis Elizondo recently just did a conference at, I think it was the SCU conference is what it was called, and he said that TTSA had metamaterials that had extraordinary properties. Regarding metamaterials, or material that has strange properties to it, what do you think these crafts are made of? That seems to be a hot topic this year regarding strange materials, metamaterials.
Is that for me?
Sure, anyone. Anyone that wants to. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any direct knowledge of it other than, you know, when that New York Times story came out and they mentioned the fact that they had, you know, metamaterials. The first thing I thought about was, well, where did you get them? How did you know that the source wasn't conventional? And so, I mean, there's a big gap in the knowledge there to make any kind of decision on it. But definitely from a scientific standpoint, if there are materials, and remember, material science is a really big deal for humans right now. The properties of these materials can help us achieve things that were never really possible before. So, you know, I do understand why that's an exciting find for them. And I guess time will tell, based on the results that hopefully will get published, that will help us understand really what these materials are, where they came from.
Hey, just to jump in really quick for Stacy or Shane, have you ever have you heard of anyone claiming or anything along those lines to have picked up any kind of fragments resulting from this case? Any kind of, like, something dropping off, something excreting? Those types of cases do exist. I was wondering if there's any instance of anyone claiming anything like that related to this case, this Phoenix Lights case.
I don't think I've heard of anyone that saw anything drop, or, I've never heard of any material that dropped from any of these craft that came over back in '97. I think the only thing that really hit the people at the time was a sense of calm. I know that's been kind of a common thread through a lot of the stories that I've heard from the Phoenix Lights witnesses, and that they were given just kind of a calming effect. There was one gentleman who was told, "Don't be scared. just watch. Okay, that was the message that he got. So there was nothing malevolent going on here. Everyone seemed to have reported that it was a calming effect, that it was, everything seemed great, and they knew that they were not in any danger, and they were not fearful. So that's pretty cool for tens of thousands of people to all have gotten that same feeling about this, that there was nothing scary or harmful about it. So I think they were just dropped with a little bit of love. I'm not sure, but it seemed like everything was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because half a year prior, Independence Day came out with that incredibly massive ship that we all remember today from the movie, flying over the world. And according to Dr. Khatai and others, there were kids, when they saw this massive V-shaped craft flying over the skies of Arizona, they lifted their hands to wave at it. And they felt a sense of happiness when they saw it. And Shane, I wanted to ask you, there seems to be a lot of strangeness regarding this topic of crafts in the sky. People get scared. Why do you think children would be so accepting?
Yeah, I guess they just they are more open-minded, and I mean, kids are more easily scared, I would say, because fear is really a product of just a lack of knowledge or understanding what's happening, and it's our survival instinct. So, but kids on the other hand, they're pretty open-minded and they're accepting of what they see. So, I think that probably explains some of it, just the nature of a child versus that of an adult.
Fantastic. And then lastly, I also wanted to ask Frank if you had any questions, but the last question I have is alien technology. I believe personally, they are millions of years, eons ahead of us, technology-wise. My statement's a little complex. I'll just go ahead and talk. I spoke to a few hunters recently about the topic of ufology, extraterrestrials, if they land, would they grab their weapons? And every single one of them said no. Why? If they're that far ahead of us, what's the point? Do you have anything to share about that perspective? Anybody? If you want to jump in.
Well, I guess I would agree with that. Again, if in that moment you're not terrified, which really the evidence is starting to indicate that people aren't necessarily going to be terrified en masse. Why would you arm up? I mean, the capability they have is so greater than ours. I think it's quite obvious no weapon would really have an effect, and in fact, maybe they would even appear like magic. I mean, we may not even understand what we're seeing. So, and I think it is really interesting that, like Stacy mentioned, that in the Phoenix Lights incident, almost every witness to a person said they stood there in awe and wonder. That was their feeling. It wasn't fear and running and hiding. Everybody just stood there, mouths dropped, and looked and had a sense of wonder. So, whether you're a child or an adult, you see something like that, I think that really is the more natural reaction.
Stanton Friedman, when he was interviewed not that long ago, he mentioned to the talk show host that he believes consciousness is connected to this topic. And he believes that telepathy plays a big part of it. What is your input on that, Shane or Stacy, regarding the topic of consciousness and UFOs? Ufology, rather.
Well, I think it's getting to be one and the same. As humans, we've always kind of relied on what we find in print. I mean, like our parents, generations before them, they believed everything that they saw in print. It was, the gospel. Today, I think we question everything. I know that I don't take any doctor's word for anything, and I don't take any word for anything that I read on the internet without doing my own research, okay? So as you look into more research on this, you find out that there is so much interdimensionality to the subject that it has to be based on consciousness. We're just learning how to understand telepathy, how to understand people that have gifts like this. Instead of calling them freaks, now we should be calling them gifted. So, the study as it goes into consciousness is really, really gaining ground here. And there's a lot of really good conferences out there where people can go and really learn about what is going on in this field. And I urge people to look into these conferences, find out what the theme is. Go see some of these conferences. I know a really good one, if you want to find out a little bit more about consciousness, is Paula Harris's Starworks USA conference that she has in Laughlin, Nevada. It'll be in November. But she concentrates on consciousness, and she brings people in from all over the world to try to help you learn and help you understand where to look for your own research, because you've got to look for yourself. You can't just take someone else's word for it. You actually have to go and do some work, do some research, and find out what resonates with you.
Yes, we had the privilege of interviewing Paula Harris, and that conference is a very important one that she mentioned. She actually shared a lot with us about the topic of consciousness, so I am very grateful that you brought her up.
Oh, I think we lost Chant. There you are. You're back. Are you
okay.
back?
Yep, I'm right here. Thank you. I actually wanted to ask Shane a little bit about consciousness and this topic of ufology. How does it connect for you? Is it on a level that's really personal, or do you feel like, do you have any other data to share with us about the consciousness and ufology topic?
Yeah, when I first started, I absolutely was a nuts and bolts guy. It was, hey, what is that metallic machine in the air there? I want to know what it is and why it's here and whose it is. However, the more you get involved in ufology, the more research you do, you begin to learn that it's more than just our, Western materialistic view of things where, it doesn't exist unless I can taste, touch, or feel it or whatever. And, if you look at the work of people like John Mack and David Jacobs and dealing with people who, have had either were abducted or had contact in some way, or even people who witness, UFO displays, let's call them, people interpret them differently. There is clearly something going on a mental or a consciousness level that we're not completely grasping. And maybe this explains sort of the curious nature of sightings, how sometimes they blink in and they blink out. And, it's just the high strangeness, there has to be an explanation for the high strangeness. Let's put it that way. So this connection to consciousness really seems to be the more modern interpretation of ufology. And, a lot of different folks from the different camps are coming together on that. So, there is clearly something going on there on that level. And maybe as time goes and we turn our attention to that more fully, we'll be able to understand it better.
There was a few movies I'm sure you saw. I wanted to mention them, and that is Close Encounters by Steven Spielberg. There was also Star Wars, where there was a moment when one of the folks in the movie waved his arm to use telepathy to change somebody's mind into allowing them to go forward in the movie. I'm sure everybody is probably screaming out the name of that.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right, yes. And that was a really important point in the film. There's also E.T., where the extraterrestrial connected with the main actor to the point where if he got sick, the main actor did too. These movies were produced a long time ago. So this topic of consciousness has actually been in mainstream for a while now. Shane, when you saw those movies, did they affect you?
Not at the time. I mean, yeah, definitely those movies affected me. I mean, I loved them. They were, fascinating. I just did not pick up on that as a connection to consciousness so much as now looking back at it and after, being involved for a few years. Yeah, that's definitely a big factor.
Wanted to bring up one last thing, and that is a Close Encounter CE5. which is classified as human to alien initiated communication. And that idea being that aliens have telepathic abilities and they're telepathically relaying messages to humans. Is that accurate, or can you explain that better? Shane, sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. I am not terribly familiar with the CE5 protocols, but I know that, that it is occurring. And if it in fact isn't occurring, then we have to gain an understanding of it, that, it's a legitimate phenomena. And as a result, really, it should be studied. And that's the thing about all facets of ufology, is we really need to get a good understanding. But to do that, we need the right people studying it and going through the scientific process so that we can, properly categorize it and, hopefully apply what we learn to have a better understanding, even relationship with them, or, at least an interpretation of what's being presented to us.
I wanted to go ahead and end the interview for Shane and Stacy, who have been so wonderful in allowing the privilege of having their company tonight, with letting people know a little bit about MUFON, and they can also share where the listeners can report their witness sightings of crafts in the sky or anomalous objects or orbs. And MUFON, which is an all-volunteer, nonprofit, charitable corporation. It's the world's largest civilian and oldest UFO investigations and research center. Can you please give the URL out and explain the kind of report? I think it has an acronym like CFS database. Can you please relay a little bit about that, Shane or Stacy, where people can go to report their sightings?
Oh, Stacy, you better do that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll help out with that. So yes, if you do see something in the sky and you really want to report this, you want to find out what it is, please send that in to us, because we'd love to give you a hand on that. You would go to www.mufon.com. And on that site, that's MUFON's main website for their international site, there's going to be a tab there that says Report a UFO. You simply click on that. It gives you a very simple form to fill out, and by the time you do that and submit it, then it shoots it back down to the state that it originates from, and then someone in that state, and in Arizona, that's me, I will assign a field investigator to that case, and then you'll be notified within 48 hours from a field investigator, and then they'll go over some more details with you on the case, and that's about all there is to it. And it turns out to be really.
And Stacy, you send all the best cases to Shane, right?
Well, Shane gets a lot of our good cases. Yeah,
she does, yes.
Best field investigator. So, yeah, he's done some really interesting work.
Two things. Let's mention the name of the director, Jim. Could you please give his name out, Stacy, so people know who the director of Phoenix MUFON is?
Yeah, the state director for Arizona MUFON is Jim Mann.
Right.
And if you'd like to contact him, his name is on the website, which is phoenixmufon.com.
Thank you.
So you can find out what our monthly meetings are there, all the information there, who's speaking, what they're speaking about, the location, and we have meetings monthly, and we'd love to have people there. It is open to the public.
Yes, actually, and I almost forgot. I didn't want to forget this, and that is, you're having a meeting this Sunday. Is it open to the public?
Actually, it's this coming Saturday. Yes, it
or
is
Saturday.
Open to the public. It's going to be Saturday, March 23rd at the beautiful Arizona Historical Society Museum. It's $15 a person. It's a 3-hour-long presentation, so you're really getting a good value on that $15. It'll be the most interesting afternoon you've had in a really long time. And we've actually got Tom Reed speaking this coming Saturday, and his whole family was involved in an abduction. So he's going to be telling us all the details on that. And we are having a sky watch later in the evening as well. So we welcome anyone who wants to join us. Please come on out.
That's incredible. I'm so glad you were able to mention that. Do you mind if I bug you for one last thing, Stacy?
Sure.
Can you share with us a few of the speakers that you have loved in the past? I know that you love all of them, but the speakers that you resonated with that have actually attended your MUFON meetings in Phoenix.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's quite a list, because we've been doing this for about, I think, 12 years now. every month. We have not missed a month in 12 years. So we've had all of great high caliber speakers from all around the world. We've had Dr. Sam Osmanagic from Bosnia talking about the Bosnian pyramids. We've had David Paulides talking about his books Missing 411 and about his studies on Bigfoot. We've had him 3 times. We've had Richard Dolan 3 times. We've had Linda Moulton Howe twice. We've had Nick Redfern, Nick Pope, John Alexander, Bryce Zabel, Don Schmidt, you name it. They've been here. Stanton Friedman,
Stacy, didn't you have George Knapp drop some news? Wasn't that Phoenix MUFON who had George Knapp out there maybe the early part of this year?
Just a couple months ago, it was in December, we had George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell both up on the stage. So that was quite a day.
That's incredible. And that was a really important day. Do you mind just spending 1 minute sharing a little bit about that, please, Stacy?
Well, we had George Knapp come speak to us way back in 2008, and we loved it so much. He is such a completely well-spoken gentleman and very highly educated, and so we had to have him back. So I worked on him for, 10 years to get him back here, and I finally did. So we wanted him back to talk about Skinwalker Ranch, because this is a subject that is one of my best subjects out there. I just love this. And I was actually starting to write a lecture on it myself because there was no one out there talking about it. And I thought, well, maybe I just will then, And then all of a sudden, Jeremy Corbell comes up with his great film, Hunt for the Skinwalker. And so, and he had George Knapp very much tied into that presentation and that movie as well. So we had the opportunity to have them come out, and they told us all about some of the really finer details of what they did out there on Skinwalker Ranch, how they felt, what they saw, what they experienced. And to this day, that is still one of the most interesting topics out there. It's just a crazy place. It's the creepiest thing of all and super interesting. And we're still finding stuff out about that. So hoping they can tie some of that together.
You just have some of the most fascinating speakers in the world that go. And I really encourage anybody to go to these Phoenix MUFON meetings because, it's not dry information that they share. These are experts from around the world who get to go to these Phoenix meetings and share the knowledge that they have accumulated over decades of experience regarding the topic of ufology and more. There's sciences that they also cover, too. I wanted to thank Stacy Wright, the Assistant State Director of Arizona MUFON and the Co-Director of Phoenix MUFON, for going on to the show with us tonight. It's a special report of the Phoenix Lights movie by Dr. Lynn Khatai, and also Shane Hurd, Field Investigator for Phoenix MUFON. Thank you for coming on the show with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Stacy. Thanks a lot, Shane. It's great talking to you after all this time.
You bet. Thanks again, guys.
Frank, that was wonderful. I wanted to know if, it was so neat being able to speak to them because they're so immersed in this topic. They literally live and breathe it. And just having them touch on this topic tonight was really so wonderful.
It was. We've got some more audio that you picked up yesterday. Yes. Now, do you have anything in particular you want to go to next, or do I get to pick?
Yes, please do. And I just want to let the listeners know something that's important, and that is no matter what Frank picks, it doesn't really matter the order because these are all wonderful guest speakers that were invited onto the panel for the Phoenix Lights movie. In other words, folks didn't just get to see the movie. They actually got to listen to 10 or more guest speakers that day. So please do, by all means, Frank, choose whichever one you'd like. And please play it until 9 because that's when we bring on Dr. Lynn Khatai, special guest tonight.
Okay. Now, when is that going to be again? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Right. Dr. Lynn Khatai, our special guest.
No, not that part. Not that part. Right. When are we going to bring her on?
Right, at 9 p.m. That's what I was going to, at night.
Okay, so we still got another 45 minutes. All right, then, okay. What I'm going to play now is Councilwoman Fran Barwood. Now, you didn't speak to her directly. This is from the panel discussion. Is that about right?
It is. And the recordings you're going to play, the folks might actually get to hear her speak twice, which is great because she speaks about different things each time.
Okay. Well, I've got a 9-minute clip coming up right now, and I don't know how good the quality is going to come across. The interviews that you did directly, they sounded okay. They sounded pretty good. I'm not sure about this, but let's run through it. And here it goes. This is Councilwoman, at the time anyway, Fran Barwood, discussing her experiences. Here it comes.
Very modest. She was there for so many people. I mean, you got almost 1,000 calls, right? You called back every single one.
Over that summer, where was summer break, that's what I did, and it was in June that the governor did his little thing, and oh my God, I got so many phone calls. My phone has always been listed. And it's like, what are they afraid of? I got calls from Japan, from England, from South America, from Canada, from everybody else is open about this except us. Why?
And I have to say, if it wasn't for her too, I mean, for Frances, and she knows this, she was so brave, and she really got the brunt of the ridicule and the snickering. I mean, between the stuff in the paper and all that, I mean, brave ladies. So please stick with us, and maybe they have some questions.
And I got a lot of death threats. I came home one day to my husband. I said, I'm going to quit. And he goes, yeah, you should let the bad guys win.
Oh, yes, there were people coming in from the other show that we had because we had an overflow from you guys because we were sold out. So you guys come on in and sit down, please. We're going to show here. Have a seat. Stick with us for the Q&A, please.
Hi.
Lift you up. There you go. We're going to show a video now, and afterwards is going to hear some witnesses themselves. We're going to see a video that was made from someone from France, like we just mentioned. This is very, very more open to these phenomena. We happen to have the French ufologist and I think electrical engineer. You're here, Laurent? Yes, very good. I think we're going to have time for you today. I'm hoping that we can show that. But first I want to show you, we talked a little bit about how the media in Hollywood portrays this. Fear, and threat. I was asked to do the movie that Ridley Scott did recently, based loosely on the Phoenix Lights. And once I learned that it was a horror film, I said no to a number of things because that's not the facts. We were initiating, as Dr. Gary Schwartz from the University of Arizona said, if you're initiated with threat, and harm, and you see something that's unusual, how do you think you're going to react? And what's interesting? Dr. J. Allen Hyde, has everybody watched the new show Project Blue Book, which is a dramatization of Project Blue Book is it's a dramatization of the only public study of UFOs. It was called Project Blue Book. They were also doing Project Sign and Project Grudge and so forth. And we just learned last December that our own government, with $22 million study, Pentagon study, okayed by Harry Reid, has been studying UFOs since 2006 that they did, and it's continued. But he made J. Allen Hyde was plucked out of Northwestern University in Ohio University. He was the head astronomer there. And Judy, if anybody saw her coming in, who was taking your tickets, actually had him in school. Where are you, Judy? Yeah, she actually had him as a professor in 64 and 65, and he was actually coerced, in my own mind, to debunk whatever he could. And the sightings and the things that were really questionable or unexplained, he would put under the carpet. And it's interesting that in '69, when Project Blue Book closed, he opened the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, okay? And right before he passed, if anybody gets on the internet, he passed right before he passed in 1985. He did a video that where he admitted that he was told not to panic the public. And he came up with a very, very intelligent idea that science happens in threes. The first phase is complete disbelief. The second phase is, well, it might be so. And the final stage is, I know it all the time.
Okay, so there's that. And let's see, there's a, Travis Walton was there as well there, Chant.
Yes, that was a wonderful interview.
Okay.
And just wanted to mention to the listeners that Travis did speak at this event. And this was the very last interview. We were literally the only people standing in the theater at that point, being the equipment person I had brought with me, and to help record this event, this interview, and also just Travis and Luke, his son. We were the only ones left in the theater. Okay, so here this is about 5 minutes worth, so let's run this. And I think the sound, if this was a direct interview, the sound is going to be a little bit better. So here this comes.
Appreciate it. Okay, my name is Chant Hannah. I'm here with the UFO News Network for a special report. I'm here to talk to Travis Walton, a special guest speaker at the Phoenix Lights movie. It is the 22nd anniversary at the Scottsdale Shea Harkins Theater. Travis, I had a question for you. How do you feel about the turnout today? I know that the turnout went really well. It sold out right here, and then they had to open up yet another room at 1:30.
I think that's kind of reflective of the phenomena in general. I'm experiencing an increase in interest in my case. I just mailed a book to the Czech Republic, this year Finland, Russia. It's becoming a worldwide phenomenon, and it needs to. That's what it's a lot of work, and but I think people need to know the reality of this phenomenon.
There's a lot of rumors going around that Two Stars Academy, TTSA, might have within their possession some kind of anomalous fragments that might be exotic material or metamaterial related. Don't really want to know about them with you, like in regards to a comment you might make on them, so much as want to know about metamaterials. That topic has come up repeatedly from the TTSA, different scientists, the UFO community. There's different organizations that claim to be studying that kind of topic right now. Do you feel like metamaterials or exotic alloys are the kind of topic that might come up?
Well, it's certainly something that I think our government would be highly interested in, for defense type things. But we puzzled for years over what were the aliens doing there in the woods. And I did a show a while back with Rob Lowe, and it was a two-part series, and the second half of the show was about these crystals. So as a segue between the two segments, he said, Travis told me that the aliens were in the area looking for fulgurite. And this was astonishing to me because I didn't know what fulgurite was, so I had to go online to find out what it is. It's a type of crystal that is formed when lightning strikes the earth. So you got millions of volts and millions of degrees, making some very unique substances that, according to the crystal people, have extraordinary properties. Well, I didn't say that, so maybe he got confused with something the crystal lady said, but that's a great possibility that for what they were doing there, because that area there has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of anywhere in the continental United States outside the Everglades. So, a theory about what they might have been doing there.
I had a question also. Why do people appear in the face of possible evidence of extraterrestrial contact still remain as doubtful as ever?
Fear. I think fear is the number one motivation. You know, they prefer to explain it with something they can wrap their head around, and I think a lot of the fear is unwarranted. I do not believe that they pose a threat. The idea that they have some plan to take over the earth or something like that, I think, is absurd. They've been around for hundreds of years. Some of the native peoples have been talking about this. It's a long tradition. This is nothing new. With that level of technology, if they wanted the Earth, we'd never know what hit us. So, obviously, in my view, they are benign, or at least neutral. I don't see them as a threat.
We have a time constraint today because we're actually going over on time. The event was supposed to end at 5 p.m. It's actually ended at 6 p.m. and we've gone on beyond that. The theater is now closing. Just wanted to get your comments about the topic of ufology. If you were just to sum it up about the future of it, what do you think the world has to look forward to with regards to that topic?
Well, I think that, my own personal mission is to just make people realize that it's real and that it's not a threat, and to try to tamp down some of these conspiracy theories. And like it or not, I do not believe our government is in some kind of sinister plot with the aliens to, these people are, for the most part, patriots themselves. I mean, they have families, they live here. I think those kind of theories are just that, conspiracy theories.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Travis. Greatly appreciate it. This is Chant with the UFO News Network. Thank you.
Well, that went well. Okay, that was a nice piece of audio there. Nice get there, Chant.
Fantastic. And also, I forgot to ask you, I'm sorry, if you could play the Stacy interview with also John Dover and Shane Hurd.
Got it. Okay, that's just a couple-minute clip, and here it comes.
Okay.
Camera's rolling, audio's good, we're good.
Okay, we're here at the Phoenix Lights, which is in Scottsdale, the Harkins Theater. It's the 22nd anniversary of the Phoenix Lights. And I wanted to have the opportunity to talk to a few of the speakers that were here today. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jonathan Dover, D-O-V-E-R. I'm a retired Navajo Ranger after doing 31 years as a federal law enforcement officer.
Wonderful. And also we have a wonderful field investigator from MUFON, Shane Hurd. Yeah, and I just had the privilege and opportunity to interview him recently, and it's good to see you here, Shane, today. How are you doing?
Great. Great event. Want to support it. And
yeah.
Saw a lot of neat and interesting stuff today.
How many times have you been here?
4 or 5, actually.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And we also have one of the directors of Phoenix MUFON here with us today. Want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stacy Wright. I'm the Assistant State Director for MUFON in Arizona and also the Co-Director of Phoenix MUFON.
Yes. How many times have you been to this event?
10 or 11 times. So we try to come every year and really support Lynn, and she really supports us, so we're good colleagues in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun.
How do you feel about how this event went today? Did it go really well? I noticed that today sold out, and then they had to actually open up another theater.
Right, yeah, it went well. This theater holds 300 people. It was sold out, and they did have to get another theater next door to have the overflow there, so I think it was a true success.
Yes, it was. And how do you feel about the event today? Again, it did sell out in this theater. They had to open up yet another one, and that meant the speakers had to go from here to yet another room just to talk. It seemed like everything went really well today, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it did, and it's just reflective of the fact that, the Phoenix Light case is still relevant, and people are still interested in it, and even, 22 years later, you're filling theaters full of people interested in it, and so I think it's a relevant case, one of the best cases ever, actually, and the event's really worth attending.
How do you feel about the reaction from the public whenever they come here to listen to speakers talk about the Phoenix Lights and their own testimonials about their own witnessing of possible extraterrestrial craft or anomalous objects in the sky? The reaction from the public, is it positive? Do people have a lot of questions, or what is your experience?
It's both positive, and people have lots of questions. They want to know what happened, why it happened, and is it going to happen again? And they're very, very curious. So this provides a venue for them. to ask those questions and to meet the people that saw these things.
There's a lot of reasons to come to this event. We hope to see you again next year. Thank you.
Okay, so that's that clip, and we heard for the first time tonight that John Dover, and I've got a brief clip from him on the panel. So I'm ready to go with that, if that's
Great.
okay with you, Chant. Hang on.
Yes,
Here it comes. Wait a minute.
It was almost like a holographic projection, maybe a few feet away from the bottom of the ship that was in that light pattern, so that couldn't really look past that. After the light grid went over, that's when I got my first good look at the exhaust plumes on the back porch. That's when I really saw the bats from the side, where I really could see all the colors of the rainbow, shaped kind of like a flag or a pendant coming out the back of the craft. They were just really cool looking. They had impulses of light within the plumes that were individual impulses of light. There was like a fish scale effect all going back with the exhaust, and it also was weaving behind there like a snake. It was like a 3D all happening at once. Then when I walked through the house, went out on the front porch, got another really good look at the exhaust plumes, and then I could look up and I could see how many stars just completely gone from the sky, and I realized that this thing was just about the size of downtown Prescott. I'm about a mile from downtown Prescott. This covered up everything. Once I realized how large it was, it just faded off into the night just quite quickly. I wanted it to last longer. I wanted to see more of it. It just went away.
Okay. Wasn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. In fact, applause for them for doing this. I mean, this is the most accurate forensic study of one of the craft. In fact, okay, you can. In fact, when I was sitting here, Dr. Evans was telling me that that's exactly what he saw.
Microphone's not working.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the green light's on.
Okay. Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay. Dr. Evans was telling me as we were watching that the underbelly was exactly what he had seen.
I was describing that shimmering, unusual shimmering, and then stars. I was more focused on the shimmering, and then it's solid again, and then she was sort of morphing to me. But that it has to call it holographic kind of sense of 3D. Absolutely, this is what it looked like. You remember me describing the lights and him struggling to describe the color? I'm still challenged by describing that color.
Thank you for sharing that, and applause to all three of you for getting something together that's so amazing for others to learn and grow and see what really happens here. And something that made me grow was, I was starting to say, 6 months before the mass sighting, I presented my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is in between South Mountain and the Estrella Mountain Range. There's a basin there, and it's very sacred ground. And this is really important stuff, because I had no idea. When I went to my pictures, I was seeing, and I always say the data speaks for itself, just look at it, okay, that these phenomena from our vantage point on the mountains in Paradise Valley, when we see the panoramic view of the Sea Skyline, anything that pops up out there, we get to see. And we're familiar with car lights and street lights and all that. And what they said to me after I told them, I said, well, you know, it looks like from our perspective that these lights keep popping up right in that area between South Mountain and the Estrellas, where your reservation is. And they started to giggle. I said, is that funny? They said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. It's part of their culture. It was the first I had heard of it. It blew my mind when I started looking into that aspect of these phenomena. That native cultures worldwide, indigenous peoples worldwide, are so much more open
to these phenomena. Invite the Hopi right here in Arizona have protocols to invite them in. Many believe that these orbs are spirit world or ancestors coming to give them knowledge and guidance and inspiration. And I have to admit, I've certainly been inspired, as Dr. Evans and others have been inspired by these phenomena. And another interesting thing that you might find intriguing is that that's how the Estrellas got its name, meaning star in Spanish. And these phenomena have been there for centuries. There's petroglyphs, drawings, etched out, centuries-old petroglyphs. There's a fellow, Jeff Woolwine, that goes out in the mountains all the time, and he found a picture that was exactly what my husband and I saw. These these orbs or circles in a pyramid formation, and there's even one that's a boomerang. And they also think that there is a portal or a gateway in that area. They were looking up at them during the mass sighting. And we're lucky, so lucky, to have, and the next couple people that I'm going to introduce to you are so amazing. First of all, let me first introduce our Navajo Ranger, Jonathan Dover. He came up to me at a conference and he said, you know, we had a sighting, big sighting, the day before your sighting. And unfortunately, we're running short on time, so we want to make it short because we have a couple more wonderful people to introduce, and I know you have questions for everyone, and we're going to have everyone come back up, and we have a couple of other witnesses that are terrific too that are going to join us, hopefully, for the Q&A. But I was amazed. I had no idea that they had a sighting, and it's so matter of fact. They're open to these other intelligences, something that we should learn from.
Okay, we're going to make this as quick as we can, but there's a lot of information to get out. My name is Jonathan Dover. I entered law enforcement up on the Navajo Indian Reservation in 1980. My training was 6 months long, my academy. I had to be trained as a federal officer first, then I was trained as a New Mexico state officer, then I was commissioned in the state of Arizona to be an Arizona officer. All that, and then I went to criminal investigation school, another 10 weeks. I was sick of academy. And there they taught you how to investigate cases from the bottom up. I've done homicides, I've done child molestations, I've done, you name it. I was a technical accident investigator. So we look at evidence. Now, let me tell you the story first. The night before the Phoenix Lights happened here, we're up in Loop, Arizona, and that's where I live. In our community, my ex-brother-in-law comes running in the house and he says, hey, there's a triangle just went over the house. And it's making no noise. So we all bail out, it's getting dark, we run outside, and sure enough, there's these lights circling in a counterclockwise direction around our community. We stood there and watched these lights for about 40 minutes. And they were going in a clockwise direction. There were about 6 or 7 of them. The first one would change color. The second one, it was like follow the leader. They were spaced out wide enough, but as the first one would change to red, to green, to blue, to amber, the next one would change it, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then the first one would fluoresce bright white and just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And the next one would do the same. And they kept doing this over and over, and we just watched them going around in a circle around us. As we watched them, our neighbors all came out of their houses. They turned off all their lights in their houses and all the front porch lights, and everybody brought their lawn chairs out. And our whole community watched this thing. And then we said, oh crap, all the news in the world is going to be out here tomorrow. The next day, the Phoenix Lights happened, and nobody came out. During this time, now remember, I've been a law enforcement officer since 1980. I got on the phone to the Coconino County Sheriff's Department, and I'm on the phone with the dispatcher, and I said, do you have any officers up on the north end of Flagstaff that can verify something for me? She says, no. What do you need? And I said, never mind, because nobody wants to be called crazy. Now, to give you an idea, I've had sightings since 1970s with orbs. I've had sightings in 1984, a cigar-shaped craft flying over within a couple of 100 yards of me. Huge one. I've had disc sightings. I've had orb sightings. I've had triangle sightings. But you just kind of, you know, we didn't have cell phones back then. And to carry a camera in your car, it doesn't work because it's so hot up there that it'll just burn the film up. So I've had all these sightings all my career. The thing is that since 2000, me and my partner Stan were assigned to investigate these type of cases. Not only UFOs, but Bigfoot, hauntings, and Navajo skinwalkers. And those are very dangerous cases to investigate. We did this since 2000. In 2011, we just finished a UFO case. We had contacted MUFON because we didn't know what questions to ask, and this was a ground occupant sighting. So we asked for their advice. They sent investigators up to work with us. And at the same time, Bigelow investigators were up there too. We investigated it, and me and Stan says, hey, let's go down to the UFO convention down here, and we'll see the crazy people. So we get in our vehicle, we go down, it's on our own time. And when we got there, we were walking around talking to the different speakers and MUFON and everybody else. Everybody was really nice. And I happened to run into Dr. Khatai. And I told her, yeah, we had this sighting, you know, the day before the Phoenix Lights. She says, oh my God, you need to be speaking about this. And I thought, my first reaction was, oh, no. But what happens is that I looked at Stan and I says, you know, I'm getting too old for this. I'm getting too old to worry about what people think about me. I'm just going to tell them the truth. So from that point, MUFON asked us to come and speak for them. We spoke for MUFON. We didn't realize that the people that were running the international conference were there taking notes. They asked us the next year to speak. I mean, a complete, huge audience. We're speaking about this stuff. We put together a little PowerPoint then. And we got mobbed afterwards. I mean, 3 hours of standing outside talking to people. The point that I want to make is that this thing has been going on long time. I asked Native Americans why they don't report this to MUFON. Why don't they get on the phone and National UFO Reporting Center and talk to Roger Davenport? They tell me, you know what they tell me? If we tell people about it, they'll all come out here and those things will go away. They have sightings all the time out there, but they're never reported because they don't want a bunch of people coming out singing Kumbaya and holding hands and taking up space. So I have come come to the conclusion that these things, there's something else going on. These things are real. I remain pragmatic. I mean, I want to go up to a disc and kick it and look at the bottom and see whose name is stamped on it. You know, made in Japan or something. But I haven't been able to figure out anything like that. We came up with the conclusion that these are dimensional beings that are popping into our world and popping out again. So we speak about this stuff now, and you know, we always go back to Dr. Lynn and say that, you know, she's the one that kind of pushed us toward that door, and now we're down the rabbit hole. But thank you very much for your time. I'll be around.
Okay, and there's Mr. Dover and Chant.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and try to bring in Dr. Khatai a little bit early, but we got through a lot of materials pretty efficiently. So you want to go ahead and do that? Let's at least give it a shot. If not, I'll interview you for 15 minutes.
That's fine. I'm not sure she'll be ready at 9, but I did want to mention a few things. The fact that this event sold out so fast, there were 300 people, basically capacity in the theater. And they had to open up a new theater at 1:30, just a few minutes after that first show started. Just shows how successful this event was. People want to hear about this topic regarding the Phoenix Lights that happened on March 13th, 1997. There isn't anything out there like this movie that people can go to. This movie is helpful in that regard. It's also a grassroots effort that has been conducted very carefully and with a lot of effort from a lot of people that Dr. Lynn has reached out to over the years. There's also a book that this movie's based on. It's called The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. A really important book that's on Amazon. And I believe there's also a documentary that is free for anyone to view on Amazon Prime. And I'll be asking Dr. Khatai about that tonight.
Right.
I wanted to also mention one other thing. There's a Phoenix Lights graphic novel. It's a coloring book packed with all kinds of interesting curriculum related to the Phoenix Lights that she's been compiling for 7 years. And Dr. Khatai mentioned something that's really important to me, and that is the reason why she did this movie is because it's always been about the data. The data that has been compiled about this mass sighting event speaks for itself.
Okay, so let's try to bring her in and see if she is ready to go. Hang on a sec. Let's give this a try now. And if not, I'll just have to talk to you a little bit more. And Dr. Lynn.
Hello there.
Frank here. We're on the air. We're ready to go. We're already about 2.5 hours in. It's been nothing but Phoenix Lights chit-chat for the whole evening.
Yeah, I've been listening. It's terrific.
I understand that you had the big event Sunday. In your estimation, how does this one rank up between the previous anniversary celebrations?
Well, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Our first year, actually, I had no idea what was going to happen. And here, there was a line all the way around the block. They had to extend it for 5 weeks after the first one. This was back in 2004. I had stayed anonymous for 7 years, did not want to come forward, but ultimately had a 750-page journal after I pushed my medical career aside for 7 years to try to find a logical source and meaning for what I had witnessed and photographed up close and personal 2 years before the mass sighting. And I invite people to look at the Phoenix Lights Network website, the photo page, and you'll see a very unique collection of military and we went to universities, to military, and others. Brooks Institute of Photography have all analyzed these 35 millimeter. I mean, the anomalous aerial phenomena are in the negatives. So they cannot be denied, and to this date, they cannot be explained. They're true unknowns. So anyway, the first year was just outrageous, and we took it throughout the state. And every year after that, I mean, we used to have 3 shows a day on the Sunday after the anniversary, which is March 13th. And it was really getting to the point where people just wanted to stay. And we thought, geez, maybe we should just do one show and have more speakers and a Q&A afterwards, which we began to do several years ago. It's been sold out every single year. But this is the first year, which was really overwhelming. I mean, more and more people are opening up to this. And this is the only mainstream event that we know of that really offers to the general public a place to go where they can feel comfortable and relax and see a movie or internationally award-winning documentary, as well as hear speakers that are connected with the topic, and in some way mostly the Phoenix Lights. We have Navajo Rangers who are amazing. They actually had a big sighting the day before our mass sighting, and they talk about that. We have other Zuni elders, because there really is a very strong connection between Native Americans and indigenous peoples worldwide and these other intelligences, these other phenomena. So, that's exciting to have them. This year we had Councilwoman, Vice Mayor at the time, Frances Barwood, and she's terrific. I mean, she took all the brunt of the ridicule and criticism when she came forward months later in May to just innocently ask for an investigation. And she took it on the chin and then ran for Secretary of State 3 years later to get answers for the mass sighting. And here she was asking for a reenactment as well. And most people out there don't know this. And if you go to the Phoenix Lights Network website and go to the news page, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the 8 Arizona Family Channel 3 report where they show where 3 Air National Guards came into town right before the 3rd anniversary and tried to reenact the Phoenix Lights. And it was just, it was a joke. I mean, they have never reenacted. It's never been recreated or explained to this day. And even though they tried, it really convinced the witnesses that it definitely wasn't flares, and they have never, ever addressed the craft. And, if people, again, go to the Phoenix Lights Network website and go on the GAP page, GAP, Geospatial Animation Project, not only are the 9 craft that, after a 12-year study of thousands of reports to the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, to Arizona MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, to Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood, as well as to Village Labs, which was a clearinghouse, compiled, and 2 or more people had to see the same craft. And there were actually 9 different craft, and just a couple years ago, it was discovered that there was a 10th craft that covered Prescott, which is about 2 hours north of Phoenix. And it was the same craft that Sue Watson, who was one of our speakers this year, and her family saw traverse right over Camelback Mountain. That was a little bit of a coincidence. We have learned that there are no coincidences where the Phoenix Lights are just, it's just amazing. You look at that in our documentary DVD, we actually have the coincidences that happened on March 13th. Number one, there was a satellite that was actually built in Chandler, Arizona, close to Phoenix, that was supposed to detect incoming missiles, and it went dead that night on March 13th. That was number one. Number two, months later,
Dr. Lynn.
We might need to bring her back in, and while you're doing that, I can talk just for a moment.
Oh, are we not talking?
You broke up a little bit there. Sorry about that.
Oh, are we back?
Yep, you're
Yes.
in.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Where was I? Was I with the first one or the second one?
You were talking about Prescott. There was an additional craft over Prescott.
Oh, geez. So we didn't get to the coincidences?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're
No,
right.
you
You're right.
did.
You got to the coincidences.
She
Okay.
did, yes.
Okay, so the first one was a satellite that went dead that night that was supposed to detect incoming missiles. The second was actually interesting because months later, in July of '97, there was a 3-page article about strange gamma rays that came into our atmosphere. Didn't talk about the Phoenix Lights, but that happened on March 13th, 1997. Also, then President Clinton, Bill Clinton, was actually at Greg Norman, the golfer's house in Florida, and he was rushed out to an undisclosed location. What the news said afterwards was that he broke his knee, he fractured his knee, but there was no pictures of that. To this day, we have not been able to find any pictures of that. But be that as it may, that happened on March 13th. And also, and this is a speculation, of course, I was told that we went to DEFCON 3 that night. So we're talking about a number of coincidences just on March 13th, but there are so much more. There are so many more serendipities that happened before and after the mass sighting that I share in the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, because after 7 years of meticulously researching and looking for a logical explanation, which I have yet to find 22 years later, ultimately, as a scientist, trying to be as meticulous as I could be in documenting the data, as a physician, to let people know that they're not only are they not alone in what's going on, but even though most anomalies can be explained, when somebody has a paranormal experience, it's real to them. And if they don't share it with someone, it festers. And I always invite people to go to the website, Phoenix Lights Network, or message me on Facebook and at the Phoenix Lights Network Facebook page, and just share. Just share your experience. It is so healing and so cathartic. So that was another reason I had to come forward. And of course, to set the record straight, because there was so much and disinformation happening surrounding the mass sighting. I mean, we hear all the time, people feed into the media portrayal of 2 separate events, which is not correct. Number one, there's never been any documentation of flares being sent off, although they may have been, because I actually, was told that there was Operation Snowbird, which by the Air National Guard, that night of March 13th, which is interesting because I found out that Snowbird means diversionary tactical maneuvers. So they may have sent off some flares, but not one person that I've talked to or heard about in 22 years saw what flares do. It was quite the contrary. And not only that, there is just so much more to the story. As an experiencer, certainly I understood what it's like to see something that is just so outside of our realm of reality. And, being able to deal with that in and of itself. And then as an educator, for 40 years, I've actually dedicated my life's work to the dissemination of vital health issues to the community. And when this fell in my lap, ultimately I felt obliged to do the same for this vital issue. So the rest is history.
Got it.
Doctor, I just wanted to bring up something that's important, and so I'll just talk for a moment and then I'll ask my question. And that is something that you brought up during the Phoenix Lights movie, the panel. And that was, this was not just 1 or 2 events that happened. The actual event happened at 3 p.m. and continued on till 5:30 a.m. the next morning. There were different things happening in different areas, so it was a parade over a dozen hours. This event also has taken place over centuries as well. The Native Americans have reported seeing these kinds of crafts for centuries. Can you touch on that?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Chant, because there, again, so much mis and disinformation. Not only were these phenomena appearing for weeks before, and if you go to the photo page on Phoenix Lights Network website, I didn't even realize, because we were so focused on the close orbs that both my husband, who's also a physician and a healthy skeptic, saw right outside our bedroom window. We're high on the mountain in Paradise Valley and have a panoramic view of the city skyline. So we know what planes and helicopters and street lights and car lights are. these were quite different. They were very close to our home, a little below us, actually. And we're talking about these orbs that are very prominent in the history of Native cultures as well. And I had no idea until, coincidentally, 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is in the basin between South Mountain, which is just south of the airport, and then the Estrella Mountains are a few miles back, and the basin in between is very sacred ground. And what I noticed, and if you go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, you'll see the topography of South Mountain on the left, and a few miles back is the Estrella Mountains on the right. And they intersect in the middle there. Well, that's where the Gila Bend Indian Reservation is, and it seemed that these phenomena kept popping up right in that area. So I called them up. They usually don't talk to outsiders, but I had helped them out 6 months before, and I said, did anybody happen to see strange lights on March 13th? And they started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And they said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. It's part of their culture. They're very open to these other intelligences being out there. And actually, the Hopi right here in Arizona and many other native cultures have protocols to invite these phenomena in. Many feel that these orbs, what my husband and I saw right outside our bedroom window, and thousands of people saw on March 13th, that seemed to either be attached to something or had a force field in between. When it went over people's heads, it blocked out the stars in between these orbs. And some people saw the craft and these orbs detach from the craft, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. Well, anyway, the native cultures believe that these orbs, many of them, that are ancestors or spirit world coming to give them guidance and knowledge and inspiration. And I have to admit, I certainly have been inspired to do what I'm doing, and you can tell how passionate I am because it's so interesting, so intriguing, and the data speaks for itself. But then I learned, not only did they tell me that the Estrellas got its name, because it means star in Spanish, and the lore of the day when it was given its name was that these phenomena have been around for centuries. There are centuries-old petroglyphs on the mountains that, there are several people that are studying them now that are very interesting and actually identical to what we saw, not only outside our bedroom window, 3 orbs in a triangle formation, a pyramid formation, but even the boomerang that people saw on March 13th. Jeff Woolwine is one of the people that discovered that one. And then when you hear the rest of the story, I mean, it's amazing that they feel that there is also a portal or a gateway in that area. And again, if you just look at the data, it speaks for itself. You can make up your own mind. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. But if you go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, there's, again, the topography. There's skylights in a house down the street from us. And it happens to be, those skylights happen to be positioned right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So you can see over and over again, these phenomena pop up right there. And what's also interesting is that 2 months before the mass sighting, after having the close sighting in '95 and wondering what this advanced technology was doing outside our bedroom window, these phenomena, over a mile wide, appeared at a distance near the airport, it seemed. And I called around the next morning and found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport who saw the same thing at the same time over Class B restricted airspace. They were very forthcoming initially, did not show up on radar. And what they described were 6 points of light, because they were alarmed. Anybody that comes into that airspace, it's like a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport, and this was close to their tower. Anyone that comes into that space, and we're talking about 1,000 feet altitude, must call into the tower, and no one did. So they picked up their binoculars to look, and in their own words, they saw 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span, in their own words, that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to. And one of them was a meteorologist, and this was key because people are now coming up with some theories that the wind carried these things, whatever. He says to me, the entire thing as a unit turned against the wind and then elevated slowly and moved in synchrony behind South Mountain, which is just south of the airport. So I said, so what were they? And there was silence. And then one of the air traffic controllers says, beats me. I said, you're air traffic controllers. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. They had no clue. They ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, helicopters, Chinese lanterns, even skydivers with lights. And we stayed in contact. I continued photographing these phenomena. I just felt compelled as a scientist to get it documented on film up into and including March 13th, when thousands of people were outside purposely looking up at the sky for a view of the Hale-Bopp comet, which was very clear in the northwest sky, when they also saw these we just found out last year, Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, from his study of the data, concluded that one of these objects was 8 miles wide. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. And, you know, the rest is history. Again, they were silent. They were rooftop level, just gliding along very, very slowly. Some people said they could have thrown a rock at it and then taking off at blink speed, or actually one of them broke in two and shot up. Go to the GAP page, GAP, and you'll see the different craft. And 2 or more people had to see the same craft. What's interesting is that whether it was one craft that could morph into looking different, or the perspective from where they were standing at the time, because even when I saw the 6 lights pop up in the same location on March 13th during the mass sighting as 2 months before, by the time I got out there with my video camera, it had changed to 3, like the endpoints of a giant V or triangle. And that's the only video, by the way, it was taken before 10 o'clock, that has been verified by optical experts as a true unknown, and also verified by air traffic controllers I was seeing at the same time. And Kurt Russell, the actor, was actually on approach to Sky Harbor with his son, private pilot, about a half mile out, and he saw the same thing. He saw the 6 lights in a V formation as I was photographing them. So that's pretty interesting in and of itself. But as you mentioned, Chant, on the day of March 13th, and that's what's very interesting, because people try to just hone in on March 13th. This is happening for weeks before. But on March 13th, and years, by the way, because if you go to the 95 pictures that I have of the close orbs, the same exact phenomena is in the same exact location, probably over Class B restricted airspace. It looks the same in 95, 2 years before the mass sighting, disappearing as the close orbs were disappearing. So they've been around for a long time. But be that as it may, on March 13th, the sightings did not begin. The first report we have are daylight sightings in Arizona. 5 o'clock hour by Native Americans in New Mexico, 7 o'clock hour in California, 11 o'clock hour, there were 2 commercial airline pilots, 2 separate airline pilots that tried reporting one of these mile-wide craft that was just covering Las Vegas. And they got freaked out because some authorities got on the loudspeaker and were asking them all kinds of questions. I have that story in my book. And then the sightings continued, even though the bulk of reports did come in between 8 and 10, because that's when most people were outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet. But the phenomena continued all the way until 5:30 the next morning. The last report we have officially, and it was actually said to me personally by a Boeing crewman who was coming into Sky Harbor International Airport with his crew, and they all saw one of these mile-wide craft over their tarmac. So we're talking many, many hours. We're talking many different things going on, a parade that was going on throughout our state and beyond. So there is much more to this story.
Real quick, let me get in here real quick, there, Chant. One guy that I was never familiar with, that Chant picked up a couple of interviews with, that I got a real kick out of listening to, and that was Brad Evans. His was a name I was not at all familiar with. Why don't you talk a little bit about Brad and how he came forward and how he got involved with all this?
Yeah, it's very interesting because he's a psychiatrist. He was coming up from Tucson, which is 2 hours south of Phoenix, with his family. His wife was driving. His daughter, I think she was 11 years old at the time, was coming up with her friend in the back seat to a swim meet in Phoenix. And one of the biggest highways here is I-10, and coming up from Tucson to Phoenix. And suddenly he noticed in the passenger seat these lights coming towards him. And then suddenly it was right above them. And as he looked, I mean, he really got a great look at it for a while. And what he saw was that the wings of this thing extended on both sides of the highway into the, it's just land on each side. And he was just mesmerized by these lights. And his wife actually was told telepathically not to worry. And he, on the other hand, was very excited, just really taking it all in. Nobody said a word to each other after this. Same thing happened to Kurt Russell, by the way, for years. And there were other people too. It just is uncanny that would happen. But it did to a number of people, including this Dr. Brad Evans. And it wasn't until months later, similar to what happened to Kurt Russell a couple years later, he saw something on TV that was related to the Phoenix Lights and was like, whoa, we saw that. Like a Richard Dreyfuss moment, as Kurt Russell would say, where it was just so familiar to him. And suddenly they started talking about it and realizing that, yes, they really did see something quite unusual. He wrote a beautiful, almost like an essay about it that he shared with MUFON, and Village Lab shared it with me. And I ended up putting most of it in the book. So his beautiful description, very detailed description, and actually also an illustration of what he saw. He in his own words, it seemed like a diamond within a diamond of these lights. And then just last year, he decided that, it's enough. He was coming forward publicly. And for the first time last year, we invited him to the documentary presentation and Q&A, and he was gracious enough to do that. And also this year, and he just moved to Hawaii, unfortunately, so he won't be around in Phoenix. But the fact that a psychiatrist would come forward and really address not only the data, the hard data, but also the fact how it affected people, because that's very, very important that people understand. And I can't speak for other things, but I can about the Phoenix Lights anomalous aerial phenomena. There has not been not one report, credible report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the mass sighting, with the Phoenix Lights, or any around the world. The same phenomena are happening in other countries, are much more open to these phenomena as being otherworldly, as our own governor would say. After 10 years, he would finally come forward bravely and say that it definitely, as an awarded military pilot, it definitely wasn't flares. He saw one of the mile-wide craft, but that it was otherworldly. And what people say consistently is that they were in awe. They were in wonder. They felt blessed that they saw this. Many people pulled their car over to the side of the road to watch it. They were just curious. Nobody was scared. Nobody was harmed. And that's really significant when you really look at the data. Again, it speaks for itself.
Have you ever gotten Fife Symington to come out to one of these events, one of these anniversary screenings?
That would be wonderful, but I have to say that he is very difficult to get out there. He did his little thing, and once in a while he'll talk about it, but he really wants to stay private with it. And I'm just so glad. I mean, it was a giant step forward, Frank and Chant, for an elected official to admit after he had mocked it, certainly in '97, which was not funny to the witnesses, I must say. Especially parents that were with children were very offended, because here they were watching something that was 2 or 3 malls wide, and he's making a joke out of it. But eventually, after 10 years, it took him 10 years to come forward, but he finally did, and we're very glad that he did.
Yeah, that was at the National Press Club, if I remember about right. One of Steve Bassett's events.
Right.
Were you? Did you know that? Did you know that was coming? Was that a bit of a shock to you when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I had no idea that he had seen it. Although there were some rumblings at Village Labs, which was that was the clearinghouse. It was like a big, huge computer lab. Jim Delatoso and Michael Tanner were the chief investigators for the Phoenix Lights there, and they're in the documentary and do a wonderful job. But they also did an incredible job of not only documenting the data, but being there for the witnesses. I mean, that is so important, to just be there for the witnesses. And that's why we do this program. I host this program and organize it. And I just thought it was really important, not only to keep the Phoenix Lights data alive and the Phoenix Lights event alive, because it's so special. I mean, we're talking, if the thousands of people had not come forward and shared what they had seen and called the news and called Luke Air Force Base and called the National UFO Reporting Center, and it's all documented, that and I had this data that I have, I could not have come forward. I mean, it would have been one person talking about the data, but the point is that so many other people, so many thousands of people saw what I had been documenting for 2 years that, ultimately it was like, whoa, I mean, this is just too important not to share. And I really thought about just sticking the data in a drawer. When I came forward in 2004, and there's many people that have helped in that behalf to get the information out there and to really share, including the former governor. But when I came forward in 2004, the official and accepted, except for the witnesses, of course, explanation for the Phoenix Lights was that it was merely military illumination flares. That was it. Case closed. And you can only imagine how frustrating it was for us who had seen something, especially up close and personal, and knew that the Phoenix Lights definitely were not flares, and the story needed to be told. And ultimately, when I came forward, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I had gone back to work at the Arizona Heart Institute as the chief clinical consultant of the Wellness and Imaging Center there, the heart tests and the body scan. And I couldn't believe it. Well, whenever I had a break, I would take that 750-page journal and just pare it down to the most credible data, and it ended up to be 250 pages. It's now in its third print, which is 350 pages, because the story just keeps evolving. And the original book, every word in there, because I squeeze it down from 750 pages, is valuable. Every word that's in there is there for a reason. So I just continue to add chapters that are very intriguing as the story has unfolded. But anyway, once I did come forward in 2004, I could not believe the doctors and the nurses that pulled me aside to tell me their stories. I had no idea. I was really nervous. I did not want to come forward, but as I said, as a scientist, physician, experiencer, and certainly as an educator, I just couldn't stick the data in a drawer. And it was amazing to me how many credible people, how many learned people had experiences that blew me away, and they really appreciated once they looked at the book. And I know when somebody says, "Oh, it was flares," or "Oh, it was good," they haven't read the book. And it's just as clear as day. And I have to giggle because, everybody comes from a different background, from a different belief system, different worldview. And some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. If people have to feed into the flare theory to give them comfort, that's okay. But there is data now. There is true, compelling, credible data that they can look at either on the website. It's packed with information to consider and to really explore, as well as the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, which is now in its third print. And I just added a picture that the original publisher, Hampton Roads, thought would confuse the public. But it actually, and I won't spoil it for anybody that wants to read it, it actually prompted me to come forward. It really confirmed for me that this is real. and so much more. And you have to read the book to understand, because there's a connection between all unexplained phenomena that's very intriguing, that I also discovered. We don't have time to talk about it tonight, but it really is fascinating when you talk to the witnesses. And there were a number of witnesses who had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting on March 13th, 97. And I found that extremely poignant, because I did too when I was 8 years old. And I won't get into it now, but I lay it all out there in the book. And what really struck me is that, I thought, could there be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, or unexplained aerial phenomena that have a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, when I started looking again, I started finding such credible data at university level. The Omega Project, which is like a 4-inch book by Dr. Kenneth Ring. Dr. John Mack at Harvard was studying the connection between all unexplained phenomena. And I started calling them all an UP, because an UP, an unexplained phenomena, because not only is the experience very similar, and I lay it out very simply in the book, which is really mind-boggling when you look at, the different experiences, but they're very similar when they happen. But the after effect is so powerful, is so positive. The enlightenment, the awakening that happens within an individual who has an up experience, such as the Phoenix Lights mass sighting, that doesn't happen with blimps or balloons or Chinese lanterns or conventional aircraft, but a connectiveness to the universe and to the earth and to each other, and not a belief. It's not a belief anymore. It's a knowing. So I hope people will look at the book and enjoy it. In fact, the Kindle version, the ebook that can be played on any digital device, is only $9.99, and it has colored pictures, live links, and all the updates. I just updated it actually a few weeks ago with some even more compelling information. And now we also have a graphic novel. I've been working on a curriculum for 7 years. That's my passion. My AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse prevention education programs, distributed by Discovery Education for a couple decades now, is just prompted me to get something in the schools. The kids thirst for this knowledge, and there is nothing. There is nothing about this topic in schools. So I've been trying very diligently. It's not an easy task, believe me, but I thought for the 20th anniversary, I wanted to get something in everybody's hand that would be really packed with information and fun. And I worked with a Disney illustrator and teachers. We have pilot programs, and the kids gave me feedback for everything. And we have a map maker who actually came here from Denver and to scale for the different craft, went to the locations and drew the different craft. And also we have them so that people can color them in as well. We have a graphic novel throughout the story, The Adventures of Sue, F.O., Field Observer, and Hugh, H-U-G-H. Hugh F.O., and he's a little alien. And they take you through the story of the history of these phenomena. We have iconic pictures. We also go to the Science Museum and talk about the science of these phenomena, as well as 80 crop circles. It's mind-boggling when you really look at some of these crop circles. And I tried to pick the most unique and ornate crop circles. It couldn't possibly have been made by humans. And we have those to color, as well as activities, which we're talking about crossword puzzles and word finders and all kinds of fun stuff, and the answers as well. And I'm so excited because, as we mentioned earlier, I'm going to be actually hosting a youth program, a family youth program, on Sunday, July 28th for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network International Symposium, our 50th year. And this is really groundbreaking, what we're doing, because there's never really been anything like that before. And we're going to show the documentary, and we have lots of kids in the audience when we show the documentary at our annual anniversary showings. And we have lots of kids that are also doing, and we're talking 8 years and up, doing book reports on the book. But we're also going to be talking and discussing after we show the documentary, our internationally award-winning documentary, The Phoenix Lights Beyond Top Secret, and going through the workbook as well. And we're very excited about that. So check out the MUFON website for more information about that as we go on. But also coming up, I'm going to be speaking and doing a workshop at Contact in the Desert, and that's going to be the last weekend in May, which is also going to be very interesting and fun, because in the lecture I'll be talking about how the story unfolded through the media, and that is really intriguing in and of itself. And the workshop, we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of how not only these phenomena affect people at a very, very deep soul level, but also how you can connect with these other intelligences. And that's going to be really, really fun. And then I'm also going to be speaking on a cruise in October 6th weekend. If you check out the Phoenix Light Network page on Facebook and my own page, Lynn Dubin Khatai is my full name. And I use the Dubin because Chant and I were talking about this a little earlier. Before my medical school days, I was in professional musical theater. And this isn't about me. This is about the data. But this is a really cool story. And you know, if I can be a credible voice so people actually look at the data, then I've done my job. And that's why I'm doing this. But it's talk about a coincidence. Before I went to medical school, I was in professional musical theater on Broadway, national touring companies. I toured with Gordon McRae in Oklahoma and Betty Grable in Guys and Dolls, and understudied Barbara Eden in Sound of Music and a whole host of others. But another thing that I did was really fun, and I had no idea that there was actually mentioned with my character in the movie.
Doctor, do you mind if I introduce this story? I wanted to talk just a little bit about it. The story is absolutely fascinating, and Dr. Khatai did not get to bring this up during the Phoenix Lights movie on March 17th. And she shared this with me today, and I just wanted to let everybody know how fascinating this story is, and then she can go ahead and talk about it. And that is, she had the privilege of being involved in a movie that everybody knows about. They're all familiar with it. It's one of my personal favorites. It's a dark comedy. It's hilarious. It's called Raising Arizona, which the cast is Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, John Goodman, William Forsythe, Frances McDormand, Randall Cobb, yourself as mother, and finally Trey Wilson, who plays the role of your husband, father of these kids. And what's very interesting about this movie, and I know you'll go ahead and give us far more detail, I'll just touch on it a little bit, and that is the father happens to be talking to a reporter, and then you can go ahead and just take it from there.
Okay. Well, actually what happened, and I shared this with you, Chant, which was really amazing. The movie came out, a Coen brother movie, hit movie, cult favorite, whatever, in 87, 10 years before the 97 Phoenix Lights mass sighting. Why is that? A little bit of a coincidence, because someone came up to me when I came forward, after I came forward in 2004, several years later, actually, at one of the conferences, and said, you know, there is a reference to your character, Florence, Arizona, and UFOs. And I honestly did not recall that. And I looked back, because I hadn't seen it since the late 80s, and lo and behold, Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter, for anybody that doesn't know the movie, cannot conceive. And as you mentioned, Chant, it's a black comedy. And they decide to kidnap one of the Arizona quintuplets. We had 5 kids. And make a very long story short, after one of the kids is kidnapped by Holly Hunter and Nicolas Cage, there is a press conference in front of our home. And one of the reporters sticks a microphone in my husband's face and says, there's a rumor that your son was abducted by UFOs. Is there any truth to that? And my husband says, oh, please, son, please don't print that. If his mama reads that, she'll lose all hope. which is very different from my take on it. But this was 10 years before the mass sighting, where ultimately I would become not only a key witness with the only 35 millimeter photographs that have been analyzed by military and university optical experts as true unknowns, but as a spokesperson and doing what I'm doing. But was also interesting is that the cinematographer for Raising Arizona, again, this was 10 years before the mass sighting, ended up, and he was just starting out too, like many of the cast members you mentioned. It was one of their first movies for Holly Hunter and John Goodman and William Forsythe and Frances McDormand. She had only done one movie before. And here it becomes such a big hit. And years later, this cinematographer went on to do Big, the movie Big, and When Harry Met Sally, and The Addams Family, and a whole host of other movies. Ends up that he also created and directed and produced the Men in Black series, which is amazing because, here we're talking 10 years later, in 1997 is when the first movie came out.
Yes, and that's absolutely fascinating. I also wanted to mention a very important movie that you have on your Gap page. And by the way, can anybody hear me? I just want to double check.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. And that is the only known forensic analysis done of the Phoenix Lights in animation form was done by Laurent Chabin, who traveled all the way from Europe to be at the Phoenix Lights movie. And if you scroll down the Gap page, you'll see that fascinating animation that was created not only by Laurent Chabin, but Larry Lowe as well. And they did a lot of hard work on that animation. I think Dr. Lynn, you need to bring her back on again because she was just dropped. In the meanwhile, also wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that she had 35 millimeter photos taken 2 months and 2 years, I think prior, regarding the Phoenix Lights event. I'll go ahead and ask her to confirm that. In the same area in restricted airspace.
Back.
Okay, great. Hi, Doctor. I just wanted to share with you, I don't know if you can hear me, but I wanted to share with you that I let the listeners know about that forensic analysis done, the only one ever done, of the Phoenix Lights animation done by Laurent Chabin and Larry Lowe. And that can be found on your Gap page. If people just scroll down, they'll see that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also...
No, it's fabulous. Did you hear me finish the story with Barry Sonnenfeld and the...
No, yes, we didn't hear that part. Barry's the fellow you were talking about.
The Men in Black.
Going over into the Men in Black. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did get that.
Did we finish? I lost you there. Did we finish that?
You didn't name drop him, but yeah, that's who you were talking
Barry
about.
Barry Sonnenfeld, and he's huge, and it just so happened that he created and directed the Men in Black series, which ironically opened, the first one, actually premiered in 1997, the same year as the Phoenix Lights mass sighting.
That is
little coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of synchronicities. Doctor, we just really want to thank you for having taken the time to come on this show and share all of your incredible data and experience regarding the Phoenix Lights. And it's just been such a privilege and an honor to talk to you.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for letting me share and for attending our wonderful, amazing event this year. And, it's just so important that we just keep this information alive and out there, and more people worldwide are finding out about the Phoenix. Like the governor, like Kurt Russell, and then, of course, we also showed that Alice Cooper, one of our own Arizona icons, music icons, also came forward. He had a similar sighting to the Phoenix Lights a couple years later. And the more and more credible people that come forward, the more and more other people will feel that it's okay to talk about this topic, to address this topic. And that's what we need. We have to get it out in the open, address it, accept it, and study it so we can find out who's driving these things as well as move forward on our own evolution. And I look forward to that day.
Awesome. Thanks a lot,
I want
Dr.
to
Lynn.
let all the listeners know to please go to the phoenixlights.net website. And Doctor, thank you again.
Thank you, and keep looking up.
All right. So that is that.
That was fantastic, Frank. Thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful show.
Yeah, you did a great job on Sunday, and the whole show here tonight went a lot smoother than I was anticipating. We managed a lot of guests in and out and played a lot of audio files, and it went really well. So thanks for doing that on Sunday. And we got it. At least for the folks who weren't there, we got gave them a little taste of what it was like to be there directly. I wish I could have been there. But, it's only a couple thousand miles away. So unfortunately, I couldn't make it. So.
Well, I just wanted to mention something, and that is I showed up there a little bit early, but I actually spent 7 hours there interviewing everybody to be able to do this special report, and I've been working on this special report since Sunday. So, but the amount of time I've spent on this report has been very little compared to the years that Dr. Lynn, Khatai, and others close to her have spent in the thousands of hours on this event. And I encourage anybody to go see her Phoenix Lights movie again when it's showing next year.
Yep. Yeah, it sounds like it was a great time. And if you're in Phoenix when they're running that, then get on out there. That's what I would say. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up. We topped our record longest show by a good bit. We blew that record out of the water. So let's wrap this up and have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.